In this world, angels live among us.
Borders of a land unreachable during
Det svävnad har utlöst sig till något oförutsägbart.
What would you give to feel again?
Hello everybody and welcome to the Quura Cast and Crew Roundtable. This is a post-finale chat where we discuss any questions or sort of things that we might want to discuss, any hangnails, anything else, anything you want to get off your chest about Myre's character. It is this is it. This is the last chance you have to do it. We've curated a bunch of questions throughout the week on the Discord from people that have submitted questions on there, so thank you if you've done that. And we'll take some questions from the chat as well throughout the show. You can simply post a question in the chat room with something like, I think it's Q&A, and the mods will snap it up and send it to me. We might get through all of them, we might not. If we don't get through every single question, then you can submit questions post-show to the Discord. If we don't get to it, just post it in the Discord and tag one of us, whoever it might be concerning, and we will follow up. We'll circle back on Monday morning and follow it up. You laughing, Mergs? You okay? You can break character tonight.
I know. It was just, I saw that you posted that you bored me to sleep and it made me laugh. That's all.
It just looked like you were asleep. So this is what the cast looked like underneath all of that makeup. Myre obviously
Myre looks really different and crazy.
I try.
Yeah. And
transform, you see, for the role.
Yeah, and this is what I look like. I think the first thing that I want to talk about is this.
Please, God, yes.
Had nothing to do with the show. Nothing at all.
I swear to God.
Every week we would get on the pre-call and they'd be like, he's changed it. It's something to do with the show. It's like Mordrill eating through the fabric of the universe. And I was like, no, this is nothing to do with the show at all. Nothing to do with Quura.
His mind
I just want to look like I live in a ragged
It's been
apartment.
me going insane over the last 6 months.
I'm just gnawing at the walls of your enclosure.
Yeah. Audio listeners were discussing the fact that in the background of my my camera I set up, there is a thing hanging on the wall. Yeah, so that's that. Let's get into it. The first question that I thought would be a good one to open with comes from Druidic Dwarf for all cast. What was the inspiration for each of your characters? That's it. That's the question. Who wants to go first? Anyone know?
Well, I wanted to be a dwarf, and Brad told me I couldn't.
Not true.
It is actually true. You said you have to be an orc at least once. Your name is Orcish.
I did.
And I said,
I said you have to be an orc at least once on a Tablestory show because your name is Orcish. I didn't. Yeah. I didn't mean now. You didn't have to do it for this.
And then you sent me threatening notes in the mail.
No, I didn't.
You sent a man to watch me outside my window.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy because he told me that
was
I
nothing to
couldn't
do with
be an Azamar.
He was just snapping some pictures. Had nothing to do with
Well, you guys, you both picked the Miranda's was worse. Because I remember planning some stuff for the dwarves, and you were like, I want to be a dwarf with like future tech
is what I wanted.
Yeah, you wanted gunpowder, and I was like, oh, I was kind of going for an Iron Age vibe. I don't know if there is gunpowder, but then I was like, I guess I'll make it so that there is one particular group of dwarves under a mountain somewhere that highly guard their technology, and they do have gunpowder, like really rudimentary guns maybe. So we were originally going with that, and then I said, then I feel like you were like, I don't know about a dwarf now, I've changed my mind. And I said, why don't you play an orc? You've got to play an orc at some point. Your name is Orcish. That sounds about right. Weird to not, at some point in a Tablestory show, actually be an orc.
And then, inspired by Mythomatic, I was like, I should definitely play an orc and not min-max his class and play barbarian or fighter. I should definitely play a wizard with 16 strength. for some reason.
It worked out a few times.
Yeah, I broke some locks off of little lock boxes with my orc strength.
I forgot about that.
It was the only strength. I think I was the only strength base, or well, the only person with decent strength, unless
That's pretty
Gildan went
strong.
bear.
I think. Okay, I don't remember. I have to look at my character sheet. Hang on. Am I putting roll 20? I seem to recall me having some decent strength stats though.
I think I literally was like, I would like, well, it's funny because the first two concepts that I came up with, I was like, can I be an Azamar and can I be a Dragonborn?
Yeah, the two things that they were like, really there were sort of three species that I wasn't going to use or like make available to you, but I was playing dumb. You know, quite often when I'm making a show, I'm having to play dumb with plot points. And so, and also we have to make these characters like quite far ahead of time so that I can commission artwork for them and stuff. So I don't always have the full scope of the story written down on every plot point. So I knew that I had like some idea of the fact that I definitely didn't want anyone to play an Azamar, a Dragonborn, or a lizard folk. And you came straight in and was like, I was thinking maybe I'll be like an Azamar. And I was like, I guess I can maybe make it work, but I don't know about that one.
And then you were like, I don't know. I was like, I don't want to be I don't want to impose, so I'll be a Dragonborn instead.
I just went straight for the other one. And I was like, I can make Dragonborn work a lot better because we now know the whole point is that there are only a few dragons and that a dragon is just a lizard folk with a soul. That's all it is. You just transform into one. So what is a Dragonborn? Don't know, by the way. Never questioned it beyond that. Just went, okay, I now have to justifiably have Dragonborn in the world. The most like good guys of the world, even more good guys than our, A team that we saw. There's like a paladin kingdom and they're all Dragonborn. I just thought it'd be cool if there was like a kingdom of Dragonborn paladins that are just a force for good in the world, and even they got annihilated, and then you were like, yeah, I'll be like an evil Dragonborn from an evil lineage, and and an elf, and I was like, I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I think I was like, this is really stupid, right? And you were supportive enough that I went with it and didn't bail from it. But I think ultimately I was like, I want to play like a middle-aged Guts. I want to play Guts from Berserk, and I'm middle-aged, and I found myself as a cleric. Like, I already went through all of the horrible things and ended up at the place that you're supposed to end up at the end of your like story, so then it's like, okay, what happens now? That was kind of the concept for Ceres to begin with.
Yeah, which I think came across. I think that makes a lot of sense. Seemed like
I'm
it.
glad.
What about the other two?
Yes.
Who first?
You.
So I guess I came up with Seer because I've never played a monk before, and so I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna be a monk. And then I was like, drow are cool, and so I put us together, and the rest. Yeah, the rest kind of just became like the story kind of happened.
The description that Orcish gave to Palamar for the drawing.
Green orc.
Green orc. If you were an artist,
it was perfect.
And you got that, Mergs.
Oh my god.
You would have the freedom to do whatever you want.
No, but that's like
it's horrendous.
It's not. I mean, it's like. Well, okay, but who is he? Because then it's like I have to make up like a personality. I have to make up like a vibe.
Anything additionally.
Just draw an orc that's green. I mean, I don't know. It feels like a kindergartner could do that.
That's what he did.
But as for Seer, I mean, like, so Brad gave us like the cliff notes of the world and what our characters would know, and so I just kind of like built Seer around that. And everything that Seer is, his class, where he came from, everything is tied to that. And I guess there wasn't really any inspiration to it. It just kind of like, I don't know. Whenever I make a character for D&D, the idea and like the essence is just like it all happens at once. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then like if I need to build things after the fact, I do leave like bits open and gaps in my character stories, just so that like if something makes sense or if something happens along the way, that can then become part of, you know, there can be a reason for it in that as well.
Yeah. Off of the back of that question, Riviera Leon said, would you be willing to share any more details of Sia's backstory with the Drow? I think Sia may have been expelled by the Drow, and what was Eyes of the Mother, if I'm recalling correctly.
How much of that do you want me to tell?
I think none, and I don't want to make any promises, but we might do one last Quura episode at some point. It will not be like next week. It will potentially be next year at some point, in which we explore a bit more about Sia, because I think it's there are two episodes that are regrets for me that I didn't really get to do. One of them is shining a bit more of a light on Sia's backstory, because I think we gleaned some stuff from each character except for Sia's backstory in a direct way. And I would have liked to have done, I had a pretty solid idea for it, and I spoke to Myre about it and thought it might be fun to try and do something like that. And we just never got around to being able to do it because of sort of time constraints. And the second episode I wanted to do was the rematch with Bruno and Morgana, the vampire and the other Red Witch, which we didn't get to really squeeze in. I mean, I squeezed in, I've forced into the Mordriel round 1 fight Morgana's sort of impact, but we never really see what happened to Bruno, and he was supposed to be hunting and stuff.
I'd like to just ask real quick, if we were able to fight and defeat Bruno or Morgana separately, would we have leveled up from that?
No.
Just trying to see if there was any way that we would have actually gotten to level 15, which is what I was promised in writing in Blood, actually.
You did get to level 15. You played it as another character.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
You're welcome. Legally binding. We will get to Jilden's character thing, but the fight with Bruno and Morgana was going to be a split thing where you had to pick 2 of you to go and fight Bruno and 2 to fight Morgana. To sort of completely mirror, you were supposed to defend the city when you got back to Moon for the first time in exactly the same way that the other team did, just for that kind of mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is a mirror in this, and I really wanted to have as much of that as I could. But I also wanted that kind of fear of like remembering being absolutely annihilated by this creature to just reverberate through you as players. But on that, who do you think you would have sent to which fight if you had to split the team into 2s?
Oh,
because that was
Jilden
what Oswald
could not
was
go
do.
fight. Yeah, Jilden could not go fight Brunor because if I remember correctly, Jilden. Yeah.
She fell in love with him.
Yep.
Sia would have beeline for Bruno, I think.
I think I would have stayed with Jilden, and we probably would have fought Morgana.
Yeah.
Yep, both the healers on one side. Sounds
that
good.
would have been a really good idea.
Oh yeah, good point. Good point.
No, we would have been fine. I mean,
would we?
Me and Neo Sia take on what's his name?
It was one of the main reasons I gave you the Angel Spear as an actual weapon that you could wield, as well, because I knew that there would be 1 or 2 fights before you got to Mordriel, and by the time you got to Mordriel, I was like, I wasn't even sure if you were going to have the spear, or what you were going to do with it. So it did kind of unbalance my last whole final section, because there was a lot of plans in there for being able to long rest and short rest between the fights, and the fact that you would have had the spear going into it against Bruno and or Morgana would have really affected those fights. And yeah, Bruno, I feel like my sort of headcanon for what happened to him is that he was hunting you, and then the first thing you guys did was like teleport, because if you remember, you were in that like ice land, and you went and found like a teleportation device, which by pure chance sent you basically to the end of the map. And I think he really lost track of you then, and then who knows, after that you went into a mountain, went underground, completely impossible to find. So just to wrap up the last part of what was the inspiration for each of your characters. Jilden, what was your? Did you have an inspiration? Can I guess first?
Yeah, sure.
Because you came to me while I was writing the most depressing thing I've ever written, and went, I think I'd like to play like a really slapstick, silly comedy character. And I just want to be memes. I just want to be pure memes, because the last thing I did was this really depressing fucking bullshit show that you ran that was absolutely fucking like so gratingly sad and gloomy. And you were like, I want to play something really like funny and silly in this one. And I was sat there like, yeah, great idea. And I feel like your original intent for Jilden was kind of a comedy one. And then
Yeah.
I mean, she was pretty
Kinda.
funny, but you know, she also had that serious vibe by the end.
Well, so yeah, look, I came out of Kingmakers, right? And in Kingmakers, I played a character that was like very airy but very open. Like I didn't have her motivation was basically so tied into the cast that it was really hard for my mind to walk around like where she was going and like what would she want, because they're here with her. So it made, for me, when I was playing the character, I just always felt terrible. I always felt like she was just falling so flat, and I was always really frustrated with myself. So I wanted just a character that had really strong motivations and like really strong personality and stuff. So that was basically where the first thing I thought of was like, okay, I need to think of someone strong here that I can like really test myself with, and play someone maybe a little bit mean, because like all the characters I played end up being like Fix ended up being a bit more diplomatic than maybe would otherwise have been. So I just wanted to play someone who was like unapologetically set to their goals, and I always felt really scared at first to ruin table story shows by going and following the character's goals instead of just going with the team. So with this character, I was like, I'm just gonna make her really faithful to who she is, and we'll see where the journey takes her. But yeah, I'm kind of like Myre. My characters, I don't ever plan them. I don't ever like think of inspirations. I'm like, I'll panic. Someone goes, hey Leah, do you want to be in a table story show? And I go, oh god, oh god, oh no, oh my god. And then I'm like, I don't know, what am I going to play? Who are they going to be? Oh god. And then suddenly I go, and suddenly there's a character right in front of me. And it's like, oh, that's who I am. And usually it will come with like a voice will just appear, and suddenly the whole picture is in my head, and I'm like, oh. So for me it was like, oh, I'm a horny old turtle. Perfect. And then that was it. And then it was the first thing I did, and that was all I wrote down at first, was just horny old turtle. And then I was just trying to figure out what would that look like.
Kind of wish
like,
that I had that on the overlay for the entire campaign, to be honest.
So I was just, so then I just tried to figure out her backstory, because I didn't want to play a warlock, because I've already played one of those on a table story show. So I was like, but I kind of wanted to have like a bit of dark, like what's going on? Why is she so horny all the time? Oh, because she was enthralled this whole time with who? And then it just kind of works backwards from there.
Yeah. Nice. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Debiru20x said, you mentioned once that they chose their path heading west or east from Moon. You imagined a few of the most likely endings for the cast to take. Could you elaborate on maybe a few of those? So, yeah, the entire structure of the show was designed to be a there and back again adventure. So they start at Moon, they go to find the information of the whereabouts of the spear, which is there are only two angels that have that information, which is the angel of Tia and the angel of Ogma. And once they find that piece of information, they have to go and get the spear and come back and fight Mordril in Moon. So essentially, this would fit the exact tracks that I kind of had and the beats that I had for the overarch of the story exactly. Although my original plan, and I know when I say this, I know as I'm writing these shows that this is all subject to terms and conditions and dice rolls and what they do and stuff. There's a structure that I put down with the express sort of, I'm like, if this gets destroyed, it's fine. But if it doesn't, at least I have a structure to fall back on so that I've got a beginning, middle, and end, and I can wrap everything up nicely. So the original plan was that they went to either of these temples. They discover that the angel spear was in this location. They unlocked the fast travel, allowing them to go to wherever the location was going to be. I sort of had an idea that it would be in a temple somewhere, but I actually didn't plan for it to be in Ku until a bit later on, and then was able to mix a couple of things together, i.e. Jilden's backstory, and bring that in to close out that at the same time as the Angel Spear mission. But the initial plan was that when they got to the area where the Angel Spear was, it wasn't there. Because the angels don't know where it is and everyone was dead, there would be no way for them to actually locate the item. Now, they might have actually had items that would have helped them locate it, such as the compass that Seer had. But either way, the original plan was that they wouldn't be able to find it. That was when they would have to use Wriggle, or figure out with Wriggle that Wriggle would be able to sort of inform Thrak or Cirrus, because Cirrus also would have has a Deus Ex Machina hand that they can flip, and they would have gone to the other Gaia and got the original spear that killed Mordril, and then bring that back, bring it to Reothimus and fight him then. The original plan was for you to go to the other Gaia and explore that world and then come back. But time constraints and just the way things worked out and the way that you approached everything, essentially that entire go to the other Gaia was replaced with go to the Astral Sea. So essentially you sort of did that just in a different area. And, you know, you gained all of your knowledge that way. And in terms of endings, I would have thought that, you know, I think there's another question later on that we'll get to about a bit more of an in-depth. We can think of other ways this could have ended, but my general ending was pretty much kind of this one, that you would lose. I wanted a villain that was quite literally unstoppable. I find it really interesting when the villain quote unquote wins, but I also wanted to put in front of a D&D party an unstoppable force and see if they could do it. You know, because I know that there's so much that is possible, and that no matter how hard I try to, you know, enforce a particular set of rules or enforce a particular character trait in a villain like this, there's 4 of you and 1 of me. You know, you guys have got 4 brains that are just working together. I'm only.
Yeah, we were totally working together.
3 brain cells working against
This is
each other.
pre-show Brad thinking of this.
Working at
One
all.
brains, I think, in total.
They
But-
could have 4 brains. working against me.
It's a possibility.
Potential is there.
We failed that dice roll.
But you know, I'm holding all the cards as the DM with all the information, so that's the trade-off, right, between DM and player, is that you know your world much better and you know what's happening around the players, and they're walking through a fog of war the whole time. I mean, ultimately, you came very close to kind of disrupting that. I think there was potentially ways that the show could have ended, but in different ways. But I always wanted Mordril to sort of be an unstoppable force, really. Now Meister says, this will probably never be answered, but who brought the tower to Mordril's Gaia first? Do you guys have any idea?
Who brought the tower to Mordriel's Gaia?
Mordril accidentally. The gods.
I mean, I think it was another wizard or mage or something from another place.
Back from the future.
It was
Yeah.
exactly Thrak from the future.
Or
Right,
like
from the future.
something that connecting Aaron's little dragon character.
Oh.
I think like that creature had been there from the time that the towers existed, right? So I think the answer probably lays with that that little guy.
How did Aaron get out of this? Did he give you a note?
Doctor's note.
He gets whatever he wants. That's what he gets, whatever he wants. Well, he was sort of a guest star, wasn't he? He, you know, how many questions could be possible? Honestly, all of the questions would be this one, really. Yeah, I think that there are very scattered and loose clues that are available to you in the show, as to how the tower originally came to this world and who brought it. but I'm not going to tell you. So
Are you going to tell us
Interesting.
afterwards? No. No?
I mean, there was that whole temple that we were in. I always wondered if that was related, the whole light and dark.
we'll
thing.
see. We'll
You
see.
mean the one where there was
we'll see who's
nobody
got.
in there?
We'll see who's got what to offer me. At the end of this, we'll see who's got what
Alright.
to offer me. Okay.
Make your best offer. I'm
Make your best
waiting.
offer,
Give
and
me a
we'll see.
deal.
You know, some dinner, maybe some wine.
God.
So, Druidic Dwarf also said, Mirggles, Farvel Van. Is that German? For some reason, Google Translate auto-synced to Danish, translating it as goodbye habit. Is that correct? Which is hilarious, considering you were a nun.
Yes, it's true. I was.
Goodbye. Have it. Have free. Crack. Come here.
It as far as I know, as far as Google Translate tells me, it is Swedish and it means farewell friend.
Yeah, you told me that the reason you did that is that because Pony is the canonical voice, Pony Punch.
Yes.
Is the canonical voice for Thor's. I've had 2 or 3 hours sleep. I'm not really sure how much sleep I got last night, but it wasn't enough. I was unwell. I think I had food poisoning last night. I threw up. I haven't thrown up in years. It was horrendous. Yeah, I was just laying on my bathroom floor like.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then I was like, man, I have to somehow remember all of this lore that I wrote. I don't think I can. But Pony, he sort of recorded the one of the trailers for us. So that is the canon. That voice that you hear in that trailer is how Thor's should sound. I can only replicate it so far with my limited abilities. Yeah. So you told me that you went away, and that was why you went with that.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
wrote that. I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
great.
right.
All right. Well, thanks for elaborating. on it.
What? Okay, hold on. All right. So
I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about it
Only
more.
Brad could answer for Mergs and then be like, "You got anything to say?"
Oh, I thought I don't know. I thought there was maybe more to it than that. I was just sort of setting it up and just seeing if I've had 2 hours sleep.
I mean, it was it was that. It was just I figured like we had set the tone that Swedish was. I mean, I'll get briefly into it, but like when Brad asked me to do this show and I picked cleric and I did all of this, and I knew the area that we were going to be in, and I knew like what cleric to what angel I was going to be, I went and wrote like a full-on Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote all of the rites, all of the Dunatistic rites. I had like pages and pages of like how someone becomes a cleric of the mountain and the steps that it takes, and who, some like lore of previous people who were clerics of the mountain here. And it was like crazy. And I started like writing a language and that included like, I broke down basically Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian. And then I also got like a text of actual Giantish from D&D, and I kind of mixed them together to create sort of like a bastardized version of all of them. So I kind of really wanted, and I think early in the show, I tried to say a couple of the things that I had written that I had like included. Yeah, I'm sure it was very fun for Brad to wake up one day. I sent him a whole like music playlist as well. I was like, while you're reading this, listen to this playlist.
I did that.
Yeah.
I actually did really enjoy it because I was making so much of the world, and then you made that whole thing that I needed to do. And I was like, cool,
Yeah.
tick that off. I've done it. Just took a bunch of work
Good
off
job,
my
me.
hands. No, it was really good. And yeah, I think, I mean, you could release bits of that somewhere. I'm sure people would find it interesting to read.
Yeah,
if
I could
you
actually.
want- if you wanna.
I will. Yeah, I will. I think it's I mean, like the amount of effort that I put into it. No, it wasn't even like the amount of effort. It was just very enjoyable to do, and I cared a lot about it. It was just very fun to do. So that's kind of, it was like Pony being the Swedish introduction to the show. And then I kind of wanted to have a little bit of that language. I wanted her to be able to speak that language again as like her last sort of statement because it meant so much to her.
Yeah, every now and then I'd
adopted
have to go pouring through your notes to find something
really?
that Thors would say to you in a sort of panic moment of RP. Okay, where was that one? Okay, that was here. So Druidic Dwarf also said, since their trait was given back or potentially given or had the potential to be given back to them, what was the reasoning behind taking the trait for them? Generally speaking, I was actually going to have each of them lose a trait at every angel. You were going to give something every time you encountered an angel. But two reasons that I didn't do that. One, the first time you did it was so good that I didn't want to put that pressure on you again. And B was like, I feel like that was, I don't ever need to see it again exactly because it was so good. Like you did it. And I was like, oh, I don't think it's a big deal to lose them again. But generally speaking, the idea of slowly whittling away at your motivations and purposes was sort of another way to slowly bring you into a similar mind frame as Mordrill when you finally meet him. And you've had these elements sapped away from you over the course of this journey, and as he has over the course of just so much time. So that was kind of the original reasoning behind it. It was very loose. Even way back in the first couple of episodes, I was like, I think I'm going to be doing this. You know, it's not like I write all of this out. It's way too much to be able to predict. But that was kind of the plan. But yeah, because I feel like you guys absolutely nailed that. It's one of my favorite moments of the entire show, was just handing that over to you guys, not knowing what you were going to do. I didn't know if you were going to sort of just be like, yeah, I can no longer think about hot dogs, and then you just walked through and that was a big deal. But actually you made it into such an interesting scene that is what I did. Well, yes, what you did, but I didn't want to sort of spoil that.
Everyone else did great, and I was like, I can no longer think about hot dogs. This was easy. And walk through.
Yeah, but I think that is I still think it's so interesting because it's so pragmatic of Thrak to do. It makes complete sense.
It does it's so good. For the wizard to just be like, I've solved this puzzle completely,
yeah.
And for the priest or cleric to be like, I have to sacrifice everything.
Yeah, the full true sacrifice.
And for the monk to be like, well, if I'm not scared anymore, I can run up to this dragon and punch him.
Yeah. The mist, this is also from Druidic Dwarf. Yeah, go on.
Wasn't the reason why I did fear, but
we can't know anything about your past.
That's exactly so
we can't.
There we go.
Feel free.
Huh?
I'm kidding.
Feel free, otherwise I will only be answering all of the questions. The bane of being
but I can't talk about it because of what's happening next year, right?
Correct. Okay.
Goodbye, Myre.
Druidic Dwarf.
Myre was in this?
The mist / aura in the background often changed to different colors. Was there meaning reason behind this? Yes, so it turns red for the battle screen, and it would turn, so generally speaking, it was just kind of a radiant, sort of creamy, radiant, yellowy white, just because of angelic reasons. When we went to nature-based places, it went green, so it turned green during the A-team stuff, and also green for the orcs during the orc sort of flashback sections, and then it grayed out a little bit when you guys first encountered Mordrill, and then it vanished entirely during the last few episodes, because it was the end of the world. It was just a bit of foreshadowing that they were all going to die, because there was no more angelic hope, radiant light there. So that was why that was happening in the background. I didn't think anyone even noticed it.
I didn't. But I didn't.
You're
but
playing though.
I
You're not. Yeah, you're not watching the thing. We're in a different thing.
I look at the roll 20.
Open question. Even though really, I don't think it is. This is a question just for me. Who or what was the sister Mordrill mentioned? Was the losing of said sister part of the motivation for Mordrill's path? Yeah. So Mordrill is a twin. And it was the same in both guys. So there was two parts of an island called Marbel that they are from, and they both represent angels of Kelemvor, the god of death, But Mordril is the sort of lesser twin, and Mordres is the more dominant twin. Mordril got all the recessive genes or whatever, and he's supposed to be a passive angel.
Brother.
Yeah, he's sort of, and in both worlds, he's sort of the passive angel, whereas Mordres is an angel of sort of death and life. Mordril is more like, he's more akin to Karen, the boat, River Styx boat guy, who takes you across the river, whereas Mordres is like the legit Reaper and Lifebringer. So that was kind of the original thing. In Mordril's world, Mordres is like the strongest angel, basically. That's what it was in the lore. She's the commander-in-chief of all of the angels. Because they were people, they weren't like the angels on this Gaia. On their Gaia, they were sort of sentient beings that existed in a world with a lot of mortals. So they were extremely powerful, but there were just millions and billions of lizard folk around living their lives. Eventually they went to war with them. The angels kind of rallied and became more militant. Mordres led the angels to a loss. Eventually the mortal folk, the lizard folk, won their war over a really long amount of time.
Canonically played by PB, right?
Yeah, so the voice of Mordres is PB's voice that you heard 3 times in the beginning first episode, the last episode, and when the mirror provided the audience with the information that it provided to the characters in different ways. That was essentially really all it was. Because Mordril was so passive, and he had this kind of bigger sister influence in his life, the loss of all of, essentially he loses his entire family, but the loss of his sister, because they are literally one angel together, it kind of just sent him crazy. So he is just a little boy who loses his entire family. Everyone dies. He is the last angel to live on his world. They kill him. He can't help himself. He comes back, as he does, as we saw, even with you guys. And then, over a huge amount of time, he becomes just insane. He's just like, I don't know how to describe him really. I don't know if he is insane. He's hyper set on this thing, either trying to release himself or for vengeance, or his singular motivation is sort of that loss of his sister and just not being able to live with that kind of pain, which is just something that I find interesting. I've been fascinated with an exploration of grief type thing, grief over an enormous amount of time. There was a quote that I really enjoyed that I read an absolutely age ago from Edna St. Vincent Millet's poem that says, "Time does not bring relief. You have all lied." And I was like, oof.
Damn.
Yeah. And then I was like, how to extrapolate that and times that by a millennia of like just being by yourself and isolated. So that was kind of it. And I think it's just if you were an animal that exists in a very strict set of parameters and you remove those parameters, that animal doesn't know what to do, and really that is kind of what was going on with Mordril. So yes, it is, losing his sister is part of his motivation, but there was kind of a lot of motivation in there as well, just from a lot of different sources. All cast, how much of the world/story did you know before bringing in your character? Did you have to make any changes? Whoever wants to go first. Well, Myre, we've said this before on a green room, I think. I told Myre when we drove to Birmingham once, the original outline for this, which ended up changing quite a lot by the time we got to the show. Because that was like late summer last year, I think.
Yeah.
2023. And this show started, when did it start? Early 24.
January of this year,
24.
yeah.
So Myre had a very early version of this that I outlined slightly with because I knew that you were probably going to be in it. Myre had a came in at a slightly different angle than the other three, but I think the other three I gave the same kind of info. So I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what I told you, but it was.
I don't think we knew much. It was you actually. So long ago, we were walking around Brighton with Brad, and he goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, I want you to be in my next D&D show. It's gonna be like a really light-hearted fantasy thing." And I was like, "Oh right, yeah, sure, cool." And then he invites me to this. And I'm like, none the wiser. And then this is what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, to answer the question, like we said earlier, I actually planned for this to be a comedy character because I always felt bad that I felt like I was always quite a serious character every time I play. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to be someone really goofy, like comedic relief. We always need a comedic relief character, right? That should be fun. And then I was told, well, it's going to be maybe a little bit dark. And then I felt... We did the few session zeros we did, and the whole time I was like, do I need to make a new character? But I'm glad I did, because I do stand by that. I think you do need, there needs to be some comedic relief, but it's just about like appropriateness. So I tried to make sure it was never like too much, never like encroaching on other people's moments and stuff like that. Even if, maybe realistically she is oblivious, so she would just encroach on those moments. But yeah, I try to be really cognizant of other people's experiences and not just be like, oh, just another comic relief character, I guess, and have like a journey with it. But yeah, originally I was having second thoughts.
Yeah. So I can talk about some stuff about Seer actually, because thinking about what we might do next year, we're not going to cover this, I don't think.
Yeah, I think you're completely fine to talk about
yeah,
quite a lot about Seer.
Yeah. So like after Brad told us about the campaign, about like what he wanted, I kind of was like, okay, I'm gonna make a Dramuk, which had nothing to do with anything. And so I think it was after when he showed us the like the world map, I was like, I want to be here, because like there were some gaps in the world map that didn't like have perfect borders, where like an angel like had jurisdiction over here and one over here, but like on the mountain range there was nothing, and it was void space. And so I want my hometown to be here, and I want to be a drow monk. And so what Brad did was he made Menza Baranzan there, like, but underground. And so even though Menza Baranzan itself is this whole like place, and I don't know how much of Menzo we exposited, Brad, so I don't know how much I want to talk about that.
I think we got a few. We definitely explained that it was on the back of a giant spider.
Right. So the giant spider is, of course, the angel, and so like everything else that happened there was within Menzo Baranzan. But like Seer after Menzo became a monk, right? And the monk's sect was actually above ground on the mountain peaks, like at the summit, and so like it was separate from everything else. And so like I was able to create and craft my like my monk like sect, or whatever you want to call it, separate to the angels, and kind of make my own thing and make Seer's mission within that. So I wasn't really affected by the world, but I was insofar as I knew what the world was, and so I had a goal for Seer and for his sect, which was to, and I can exposit this as well, because like we're not going to touch this next year, I don't think, but his whole thing, or the monk sect's whole thing, was that they were essentially, let me see if I can pull up the bio here. Yeah, so he's part of this sect called the Seekers. They're these monks that are like one of the only like secular groups within this world that's all governed by angels, that you can see the angels, and therefore it takes a certain something to kind of be like, not necessarily atheists, but the Seekers didn't believe them as divinity more so than power. And so they would send monks on their sojourns to different parts of the world to seek knowledge about said angels from different places, and take and steal those things and then bring them back to further their knowledge about divinity, and so that they can one day maybe perhaps either just protect themselves from divinity, or to harness it for themselves, or to harness it to, like, not necessarily like Mordriel alike, but that's kind of what their mission was, which is why, like Seer was always looking for, items and iconography that was religious, and that's why he quite happily took Ask's like staff and stick and stuff like that, and that's more or less what his whole thing was. He was on this journey to retrieve knowledge about the mountain. Like his journey was to go to Moon and understand all he could about the mountain angel and take it back. So he kind of succeeded really early on, like with getting the staff and everything else, and that would have I suppose been enough. But with the end of the world, he kind of had to continue with the Quura and to I suppose add that to his knowledge to understand whether or not things were truly lost, perhaps, and to see where to go from there.
I have a question then. Can I follow up question to that?
Sure. I do too, but I'll go next. Go. I just want to make sure I'm in line right now. I'm in queue.
Does that mean that early on was Seer looking for, because I thinking back on it, I can imagine some of your actions being interpreted as you looking for a way to just like leave, to be like, okay, well, I figured out my stuff, I'm gonna go bring back what I found, I just need to like convince these guys to not pay attention and I'm outie.
I don't think that Seer had any impetus to leave because it was quite clear things had gone fucked up. And I think it was kind of like the nail was hit on the head when they went to that like Fey world like pocket dimension, and he met somebody from his sect and realized, okay, well, they are all dead. I'm the last one. And then so he had to then realign what he needed to do or how to survive. And what was your question, Orcish?
I was going to say, do you think on the lizard planet there was a little sect of monks that started the entire war by seeking out like the weaknesses of those angels?
Maybe, but like in the other worlds, like immortals didn't have souls. They were kind of like automatons. Like the angels were like the main characters and everybody else was insects, right? Basically, Brad?
Yep. Gaia 1, the angels are benevolent but pacifist and soulless. But in Gaia 0, the angels are kind of malevolent and violent. So there's a little additional thing, but they have souls. So yeah, but the reptiles were given those souls. So the soulless mortals running around are a lot more kind of, I guess, mindless, but not fully mindless. They're just reptiles. They're very similar to a reptile, but they're much more humanoid in their physical appearance. So yeah, that was kind of the approach, at least. All right.
Any more questions?
That was from April Rain, and she also says, what was the original inspiration for this story? It's a bit of a long-winded one, so I won't go into it too deeply, but so the original plan, as Leah said, was for this to be kind of a lot more basic. It was going to be a very simple story where they did a there and back again journey that I thought would be interesting to do. Then I changed that and didn't tell Leah ever. In that the original antagonists were going to be orcs, and that these orcs were going to be kind of vampires. Vampire orcs were kind of going to be what was blighting the world, and they were going to be sort of from a world where it's similar to Gaia thing, but in their world, they were kind of brutish and tribal, but very friendly. And then this sort of curse transforms them, and they become these bloodlusted, aggressive, mad orcs.
The story of Warcraft.
And I didn't know this at the time. Which I'm so glad I didn't do this, by the way.
I would have been like, wait a minute.
It's the most annoying thing ever.
Wait a minute.
And the only way
Warcraft
to...
1 orcs and humans.
So the original plan was that you would have to travel to a place called the Heart of the World, which I'm sure is in Warcraft somewhere as well, and cure the vampiric kind of spell. Curing it, Quura, the spell from Final Fantasy, Cura. And it was just, again, these are just like the basic notes that I wrote down. And then before, because a lot of the time I will put down like a very vague idea and then I'll go in and flesh it out. And during that fleshing out process, it almost always changes in a dramatic way. This is just like at some point I had this inspiration in like 2015 and wrote it down. So then I thought it might be fun if I was like, okay, I kind of think what I wanted to do was put an element of myself into it to give myself the inspiration to go and run this. Sometimes you need the inspiration to get up every week and write a fucking session for these 4 players to come in and kick over all your Lego blocks. Not really, but I thought it might be nice if there was a bit more of a personal touch to this. So originally my plan for this was going to be that at the end of this, you find out that you went on a journey of my life where it sort of starts relatively calm and happy and then becomes just chaotic. Like just becomes like you're thrust into this chaotic world of like madness and wastelands, and you would go through this world of temptations and madness, this kind of Alice in Wonderland chaos plane, which kind of translated to the Darrow place. And then you would have to find a happy place. And in that happy place, you would understand your purpose. And then this big bad evil guy would rear their ugly head all of a sudden. And then you have to face your own darkest madnesses. This was kind of none of this really translated into this. But it became this journey. I thought it'd be really cool if you did that. And then lastly, you have to experience some sort of loss. And through that loss, you become stronger. And once you understand and know that, you're actually able to access the heart of the world. And when you're in there, you can face the last of the orcs and cure them of the stuff and things. And as I was writing through that process, I was kind of fleshing out some of the world and some of the ideas that came along with it. And then I went away from that for a while. I think I probably wrote that like right at the beginning of 2023. And then later on in the year, I started to sort of think about, because I was running Rota, Rise of the Apprentice, the Star Wars show that we did that year. Towards the end of that show, I was like, okay, I want to do a D&D show. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I kind of want to do this thing about it being this journey of myself. But I had these set pieces down. So I kind of knew that you were potentially going to go underground and go into this weird world with these like Darrow. And if you'd gone the other way, you would have gone and encountered deep gnomes that live in this kind of tunnel system that's made by a giant angel worm. And it would have just been this like, it's a maze, just a huge maze travel was what I was going to do. So I knew there was going to be these kind of places. So I ended up having that sort of structure for the showdown from a different thing. So then when I came to do this, I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do this thing that made it all weird and personal about my life anymore, because it just seems lame. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm going to do something else. And then I was like, well, one of the things that I'm obsessed with is death. Like I think about it all day. It's all I'm thinking about at all times. I was just insane. I'm just sitting here all the time thinking about death. And it is inevitable. You will die at some point. And I was like, well, what if that's it? It's coming to get you. And I just put that in front of a D&D party and just see if they can stop it. And if they can't, they can't. And just see what happens. And really, that was kind of it. At first, it was just, that was the initial kind of spark. Now, I could probably go into this on a bit more detail, but I was already so long-winded. I don't want to. Did Wriggle have... Yeah. Ackley says, did Wriggle have any more importance other than being a little guy who can go back and forth between the Gaias? No, that really was his purpose, to be honest. Wriggle was one of the last characters that I created, and it was because PB said something to me, and I wish I could remember what it was. Sometimes usually I'm better at writing this stuff down because I know a roundtable's coming in a year and I can't remember anything. But she suggested something to me that made me create Wriggle, and then I was able to use Wriggle. Wriggle exists literally as just a plot delivery device to be able to allow you to unlock the fast travel, and to maybe use to question certain things like Wriggle, evil Wriggle. Is evil Wriggle really over there, or is it just what happens to Wriggle when he goes over there? And he also exists to be both a a fiend and an elemental at the same time, just so that I could establish that that exists. Because that was also a minor plot point for Mordrill. How many angels did you have fully created? Fully created... I don't know the number, but there's about 35 of them. And some of them are very well fleshed out, and some of them are kind of just a few notes. But there's about 35, and that's like half of them that there are probably in the world. There's probably something like 70, 80 angels out there on Gaia.
One is a cat.
One is a cat, yes. So I have like, you know, the notes are pretty random. A couple of them I had to make up on the fly because you somehow went to places that I was so incredibly underprepared for you to go to. And you were like, well, let's go there. And I'll be like, oh shit, the one place I didn't put an angel down? Fuck. Yeah.
I have a question to attach on the back of that. When you say that the angels over here don't have souls, does that mean none of them are sentient? Because I don't think we ever saw an angel speak.
Yeah, no, they're not fully sentient. So some of them are. That they do have a form of sentience. Let me see what I wrote down for that. So they're more like, it's not necessarily sentience. It's more like some of them are like plant sentient, you know. And some of them are a lot more able to communicate, but they don't have their own autonomy exactly. They're very pacifist, so that it's more about autonomy. So they're not really able to move or do anything that they want. Now there are some that do move, but I mean they're in a kind of local area. There are two that wander. One of them is just a murderer. I'm trying to remember which god it was.
I think I remember you saying about this. Was he like a satyr or something?
There is, yeah, there's one that is like a god of murder. I think he's called like Cyric or something like that. What is the... It's going to be hard for me to find in my notes on the fly for this one because there's not much about it. But he's just wandering around, and if you go near him, people go into a frenzy a bit like the boar, and then you become a murderer. So he influences you immediately to become a murderer. But he's just a man, so he just walks around. He's essentially based on Randall Flagg from Stephen King novels, if anyone knows what that means. The walking man, the walking dude or whatever. There's just a guy walking around on Gaia, and sometimes people will interact with him, and if you get very close to him, he will influence you to immediately become a serial killer. That's what happens to you. So then you go out one day just hanging out, and then you get near him and you go back to your village and kill a bunch of people. You just start dextering, and then he wanders on. He wanders on to the next village, but people are none the wiser of, you know, this influence. They just think that you've become a serial killer, or they found you out or whatever. And there is a couple of different ones. There's like the condor would fly around but wouldn't really leave the territory. But yeah, they don't really have their own autonomy, so they're just kind of wandering. Even the murderer guy, even the ones that are able to speak to you, like the mirror kind of was able to reflect a version of you back to be able to tell you stuff. But they don't really, yeah, the way that I sort of set it up is that they were pacifist and they didn't have autonomy, and they're more like plants kind of. And in the other world, they're much more sentient and aware and sort of human, you know, quote unquote human. Let's see. Rain is Nice says, give me all the headcanons. What do the characters and the actors think came next? Is there any hope for reviving Gaia, or will they start again elsewhere?
Death. Very dead. It's the end.
We had a pretty good theory, and I don't know if we came up with it off of the show or off of the green room.
I think we did. I think it was off the green room.
Go for it. You got explain it if you can remember it. I can.
I think it's about Thrak. Thrak getting the tower, and then because he was already on the path to becoming like full-time wizard, eventually he would become powerful enough to be able to influence and like go back or do something and maybe go and save them. So I think there's a headcanon of way down the line at some point there may be some sort of, but you know, then you get into time paradoxes where it's like, well, it didn't happen in the show, so then it doesn't happen.
Well,
we
sort of came up with the idea that when Thrak was asking for his future self for help in the Astral Sea, that actually he did provide it. It just requires a timeline in which Thrak lets the three of you die and lives in order for him to complete his study. Which I like as a theory.
It was, it was the help that future Thrak gave to current Thrak was he stopped Thrak's tether from being cut.
Yeah.
So that he could survive and figure out how to and learn time magic so that he could come back and save the rest of you.
Yeah. Super dope.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we came up with as a good.
I have a bit of a headcanon from the finale where the moment he said it, the moment Mordriel said something along the lines of like, if I trapped you here for a millennia, let's see if you would turn out the same as me, kind of thing. And I immediately was like, Cirrus would do that. Cirrus would like be like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll show you. And then I just have this like OP, you know, foolish little fan headcanon where she like goes to this place and doesn't go insane and then just like gains power and becomes like an angel god in her own right because she's like just connected. She's at a millennia to just connect with goodness or whatever. I don't know. I don't actually know how that would work, but I do think ultimately she, you know, perished with her friends. I can't imagine
friends.
I can't imagine her becoming evil, to be honest.
So, fun fact. Seer's lawful evil.
Yeah, he's evil. His alignment was lawful evil this whole time.
Which might explain a few things that he was doing. I don't know if it did or not. Just in terms of like how...
It makes perfect sense, honestly.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, he came from Menza Baranzan. I mean, everybody there is also evil, you know, like, like customs and social stuff is different there as well. I mean, like, so it was just like most of, like, I suppose the friction between Seer and the rest of the group was just culture shock, really, you know, insofar as how do I talk to these people? Who are these people? You know, like, what might be a joke to Seer might be just offensive to Cirrus, you know, like finding somebody's weakness and probing it and prying it might be more of like a gentle ribbing than it is like, you know, oh, like I'm actually trying to like, you know, fuck with you or whatever like that. And so it was really fun trying to like not necessarily put that across, but to kind of explore that whilst not saying, hey, by the way.
I really enjoyed that when, like, I think a few times I was like, he is playing the character correctly and I'm the only one who can say that because I've seen his notes, and it's a weird position to be in, but I really enjoyed, because there is an element to this that is like, if you were just put into a room with three almost strangers, maybe you've known one of them a little bit, maybe you've spent a little time with, you know, some of them here and there, but three relative strangers, and then someone says, oh, by the way, you three are bonded on like a level that is essentially your soul, and also the world is about to end and you might be the only people that can do something about it. There is an immediate and interesting conflict there between this sort of greater task that you must complete, but also the fact that you're going to have to spend every day with said people, and what does that look like, and, you know, does the frictions of a daily kind of headbutting affect the fact that you've got this huge and important task to deal with. And I think it was one thing that Seer really brought, especially in the early 100%. Episodes when you guys were just like, let's go and do this thing, and Seer would be like, nah. Nah, I don't know. You know, I mean, I guess he was still kind of doing it even at the end, but
I mean, he'd do things. He'd always just be reluctant about it, or he would put off the air that he is reluctant about it. And I think that in and of itself is, again, just part of like the culture he's coming from, where you never show your cards ever. And so like you never reveal or talk about, like, you have two faces. I feel like, you know, one that you hold to yourself and you can see, and one that you present to others. And so he was always kind of in between that. And sometimes, like, let's say something would happen either like socially within the group or like in combat, sometimes I would either roll a wisdom save on roll 20 or just use my d20 ring, and you know, like, then sometimes like use that to govern what I do next, or like what he says next, or like what he should do in a moment.
Was there ever a part where Sia towards the end was like, oh man, everything I knew and the way I've ever always lived is now gone and dead, and even if we do survive this, the world will never be the same? Was there ever a part of him that was like, I not give up on what I've known, but maybe I'm willing to try a different approach?
I mean, so I kind of thought about that from a realistic standpoint, which is like, you know, when people come from, like, let's say one culture and go to another one, like, you know, it's very, very difficult to take somebody. You can take somebody out from where they came from, but you can never really take where they came from them. Like it, even if they're really, they really want to, you know, like necessarily like assimilate. I was like, okay, well, even if Sia was going to try and assimilate, how long would that take? It's only been a couple months. But it was definitely something that was in my mind. But at the same time, like, and some of that I think he kind of let slip through, like, his final words or whatever, like that, you know, opening his eyes or whatever. But at the same time, I don't know if he would have necessarily wanted to, because he's coming from a place where, you know, like, he knows one thing, and all his life he's been told that that's the way things are. So like, even though he's now in a different place, does that make where he is the right way of doing things and thinking things? So like, that's like an active thing you have to tell yourself. And how do you get to that situation? So I was like, no, essentially, like, at least nothing necessarily happened that would have otherwise changed Sia's perception of the world, save for maybe perhaps like some interactions that we had pre-Mirror, which were then rewound. So like there was we made some headway. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other major headcanons from anyone else? No? Okay.
About what?
Just the ending, or like what happened
Oh,
afterwards. Right. I have my own theories based on the lore that I wrote, but I also don't know, you know? Like, I like these theories, and I do think that it's a very interesting way to look at the series, you know, the Thrak theory and stuff like that.
I do have one question, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, when we first entered Hard's Tower, Thrak went upstairs and stuck his head in a place, and it was basically Manhattan. And like, where was that place?
That was probably Manhattan. But I think I have a question from someone here. I can jump forward a couple of questions.
It was literally Stygian Gate. I just stuck my head in. Like, oh, I'm getting out of here, dude.
Yeah, Rigor412 said, I don't remember if it was in an episode 0 or an early episode, but Thrak opens a door on the upper floor of the tower, and it seems to have been a portal to a different world. Would that have been another viable alternative if they didn't find the God's World to go to? So that top floor, so the towers are in superposition around the world, but the top floor is also kind of in its own superposition, and if you are able to access it and figure it out, like Hard had done, you can open doors within the tower that remain within the tower, but they've been opened before. So that's just somewhere else that a previous wizard had been and had opened a door to and had gone into. But it doesn't work in the same way as leaving the tower, so you couldn't go into that place and be there. It's almost like a memory. For me, the way I treated that top floor was a bit like a holodeck. It's a bit like that, but it's a much more tangible version of it, which is why Hard says at the end, like, I think I know of a room that I can open that is just absolutely enormous, and we'll be able to fit the town in, but it's kind of a weird. I mean, I'm not intelligent enough to understand superposition in this way. I should have asked PB to write this for me. But essentially, that was how I treated it. It's memory foam room of previous places that the tower might have been in this superposition. So most of them would be from Gaia, but maybe they're from the previous world, or maybe they're from the future and Thrak has found them and things like that. So that was kind of how that room worked. It is a bit like a memory holodeck, yeah. So, but it's a tangible one that you can go into and interface with. And essentially, Hard and all of the previous wizards that came before him and now Thrak can kind of load up into that holodeck whatever room they want. They just have to kind of, create it in a way, which is why Hard has just an endless kind of Rolodex of different rooms that he can access through that place. So yeah, to answer your question, it probably was Manhattan. To be honest, I don't remember exactly what I wrote down for it. I've got way too many notes.
Instruments, right? That's where he got the instrument bag from, or am I misremembering?
I literally can't remember, and I'd have to pour through all of my notes, and it's just going to be dead air. But I probably should have looked up some of these. The
extremely useful.
I also enjoyed the fact
instrumental even.
Rigor asked question, did they level up? Which is hilarious.
I think that Thrak probably definitely leveled up.
Thrak for sure
defeated twice. He defeated that monster twice.
The other three might have leveled up. They might have done Mordriel over one or two more times, I think. I actually had some stuff for Mordriel that he was sort of gonna say to you in that moment, and I just completely forgot. That was about where he was sort of gonna say something like, "You might be able to defeat me one or two more times, but you're done. What do you think you're doing here? Can't you tell I'm regenerating?" That kind of thing. So, but you would technically be pulling XP off of him every time you killed him, and then he'd just regen.
Ding, ding.
Farming boars.
Rain had. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just gonna. No. Go ahead. I was gonna say I had counterspell and I never used it. I picked it up specifically when you counterspelled us. I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to pick up counterspell then. This ass said he hates counterspells, so I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's lame. And then you counterspelled us. I was like, all right.
I said I hate it, but not that it's bad. There's a few things that I don't...
I never used it.
Yeah. Rain is nice said, I think the masterstroke of the entire series was Jildan casting Water Walk on everyone during the fight against the blood slimes under the Wendigo pigs. It turned a very dangerous battle into a rout. What do the cast think was their or their teammates' best move, if you can remember?
I'll hit things with a stick, I did.
Yeah. You're a little evil stick wielder.
That, the bracelet that you used, Myre, in that last fight was absolutely insane.
I was so mad at myself by how I described it, because the second I did, I was like, oh no, I would have described it this way instead.
Classic.
Me, every time I do anything.
Yeah,
in
every
roleplay.
time I do anything.
Every time I open my mouth, dude.
Yeah. That came out way lamer than I imagined it. What the hell?
It's actually so annoying because, most of the time I feel like, Myre, you have the best descriptions of everything. And it somehow it always works out where Brad will be like, hey, Cirrus or Mirggles, what do you do? And I'm like, I walk up and I do this. And there's no elaboration whatsoever. And then it'll get to Myre, and Myre will be like,
put my hand in the snow.
I feel the electricity pulsing through my veins as I take them. And I'm like, oh my God. Almost every single episode I would,
that
at
was
the
me
end of it, I'd be like, I need to be more.
Yeah, I know exactly what it was. Because Cord would be like, Ty, you killed the guy. What are you doing? I'm like, I stab him in the belly.
I stab him.
And then
I
he'd be,
kill him.
and then he'd be like, what
And
does
I'm happy about it.
what does Jet do? And Jet would be like, Jet pulls 3 luminous orbs from his thing. The thing is that what he's describing is something you can't possibly think of, so it's impossible to even replicate because he pulls it from like the 4th dimension, and you're like, I have no idea where you've just come up with this like really esoteric description for this thing, but that was incredible.
Pre-written
And
somewhere.
I hate my life now. I feel you've just reduced me to the tiniest little man.
But at
like-
least Cord can like punctuate your 4 words of description with little sound effects.
Yeah, which
He
is
does
very
with his
good at
I knew
doing.
that that's what Brad was doing. Brad would add to like the things that Cirrus did, and every time it would be like every time I would tell myself, okay, next time I do a roll, and next time I need to elaborate more, and then I just fucking wouldn't. And Brad would be like, yeah, so what you do is you go up and this magical thing happens, and every time it was like I knew better, but I literally could not.
I'm
do
not
better.
doing it because I think that your description wasn't good enough. It's just me segueing or bookending the
Yeah.
part of the round or the end of the fight or whatever. It's never because.
So
you're
in
like-
my head, the whole battle is it's like insane. It's cinematic. In my head, everything you do, I'm imagining this dragon. Seer's like doing a backflip. Seer's in the back like. Cirrus is like literally just like darting from one person to the other, like laying a hand on one person and then turning it around. So in my head, I've already imagined everything that's happened, so it's really easy to describe it because I'm just like I'm just describing what I've just seen. So it doesn't even like register. Like you just go, oh yeah, well that's what happened because that's
So sick.
That's just
kinda
what
how
happened.
I do it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's but my favorite part, I think the favorite move,
ADHD
maybe
anonymous.
it's cheating. Yeah, maybe.
That's
maybe it's
what we're in right
cheating.
now.
When we were in those caverns and Cirrus died, because that could have changed the campaign completely, but then Thrak turned back
Oh.
time and like completely erased that. But it was super interesting because of the way that like I could see we were all formulating our responses to her death. Like, oh, like in character as well, Jordan, I was like, oh my god, how would I react to that? Like, and then I didn't have to think about it because we had a few moments and we actually got that minute of grief of like, oh god, this shit was serious. She's actually dead. For it to then be like, turn back
And then
time.
I remembered my abilities. I was like, wait a minute, I can stop this.
I can turn back time. I found a way.
Which worked out
So
really well
clutch.
because I think
it was
that
dramatically
like,
timed.
So
yeah,
clutch.
cinematically that was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
For it to go that way instead of me just being like before we have the whole moment with Mordriel and stuff like that.
Or sitting there
It was
smugly
great.
like, I'm going to erase all of this. It actually genuinely felt like, oh shit, I can erase this, which was in character and out of character. So it felt,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
That was
When
cool.
Cirrus died, Brad, do you remember the forfeit you made us do? Like we lost one of the Quura, and so like we all like had this mega debuff, and you were like, okay, now everybody has like half HP, and
Yeah.
like you now have disadvantage on this, and then Thrak was like, wait a minute.
Oh shit, no.
I can understand the debuff. I was okay
Yeah.
with
Yeah, that was what it
character
was.
dying.
We'll never level up like
Because
this.
I put the roll in. I don't know where I wrote it. I really should have written this down somewhere that made more sense. But yeah, you each had a crazy debuff from that because I wanted the feeling of a phantom pain, essentially from that. Problem is I have two, for like these generic random things, I have 2 massive documents. I sort of did it the wrong way for this campaign, and this has been me every week before every single episode. Like, what did I write and where did I put it for that one thing?
While you're looking for that, I could say that having a cleric in a campaign where we're against hordes of undead and an undead Dracolich was necessary. Like,
Yeah.
if you had picked any other class other than maybe Paladin, like it would have been way more difficult for us. Like the
Perhaps
fears.
the moment where you remembered you had turn undead as we were being faced by a bunch of
Yeah,
undead, and you were like,
turn
wait,
undead was
I can
so
fix
good.
all of this immediately. That was pretty cool.
the other spell that you got later that was like your HP like total can't be reduced. That one, like
Yeah.
that was clutch too. Like
I missed a couple opportunities where I should have used that, and it like it bit my ass. There were moments where I was like, oh fuck, I should have been using that spell in that last fight. It would have been so much easier.
But you used it more than you would have if you were like a barbarian or something, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I don't know where I put it. I remember making you roll death saves for the one who is on death saves. The others rolled the death saves. And then I forgot about
yeah.
which I thought was a fun way to do that.
And I failed, I think.
Yeah.
I think I failed for someone else.
It's horrible.
Wait, was
horrible
that
way
not
to
that
do it.
moment?
I think it was.
That might have been that moment. And then I
Seer
was like,
also
wait.
almost died, but then
Yeah. Seer, I think Jordan was the only one that was up. Srack and Jordan were the only ones that were up, and Srack was only just up by 1 HP. I think you two were both down, but Sirius just failed all the death saves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
and
orc
then
stuff.
something like that. Anyway, I don't know. It was crazy. How things might have gone differently otherwise.
Here's an important question from Dirky Dirk. Who among the Virtuous Four was the best kisser?
It has to be Justice Christ, surely.
I think it's Justice Christ,
Christ
too.
he's an overpowering kisser. He practices in the mirror every day.
He
Nobody
wakes up and
knows.
gets 20 minutes of kiss time in before like anything.
think it's
Like
a
brushes
team
his
effort,
teeth,
really.
kiss time.
Yeah. He doesn't
And, like,
practice
whoever's
in the mirror.
closest to him is his partner.
He
He's like,
genuinely kisses himself in the
It's
mirror.
time for kissing morning! And he'll just grab someone and just practice for 20 minutes. And they're like
Assaults
stunned.
people
Like,
on a daily basis, just sexual assault.
whoa, no.
I am a hero.
Just abusing his power.
he's become Homelander now.
Immediately Homer.
Just
Next question.
Weinstein.
Next,
Nope, that is not what happened at
the
all.
next question.
Nope, incorrect.
Moving on. Last Socratic asks, besides the Virtuous Four, what do you all think some of the other iterations of the Quura may have been like? What specifically do you think made this one successful, open bracket, if you see it that way, close bracket, over previous Curas?
This group was the least successful. It just had the easiest task, I think.
Yeah, we
that
had
was
the
kind of the
easiest
point
start
of
as well.
that one shot. The point of the one shot was like, hey, every other group has been so ideal, and you were the only ones that have succeeded so far. Like, what the fuck?
I would literally every Tuesday do a one shot with all the, because I love making characters, and I think that that's a great question, and I have thought about this. Like, there had to have been another dozen groups or something.
I
out
like to
there,
think that
something
there
like
were plenty of people who were like peasants, like just a group of peasants and stuff, like really
Yeah, that's
unassuming
true,
people,
too.
and it took so long for the
And they
lore
still
of
were
like
better
these
than us.
tattoos or whatever. Yeah, this lore for it to build and for people to understand
I'm a
that there
level
was this
11
bond.
farmer. Look at my kumquat.
Well, they're probably just not aware. Like, I think that's what Leah is saying. Like, the difference between, so the Virtuous Four were four who recognized immediately that they were bonded, and it immediately capitalized on that. They immediately became, the best at what they do, which happened to be sort of combat. But there probably are so many people out there that are bonded and never know it. They just live a normal life and then die. But there would have been other groups that would have picked up on that as well.
It's kind of like that whole thing where it's like, just imagine all of the people who, if given the opportunity, would be like Albert Einstein's, but instead they're just like, working at a factory somewhere.
My headcanon for this is that some of the other kingdoms are just straight up ruled by Quura people, because they're just like, they're the best at what they do, but they probably suck at fighting, but they might be really good councilmen or businessmen
Diplomats.
or something. It boosts, essentially, if we are reduced to stats, which is what D&D does, it boosts them. It gives you, you have an XP boost thing attached to you for your life, is essentially what it is. So whatever you apply yourself to, if you apply it under the, once you sort of unlock that Quura bond, you have an XP boost to it, so you're going to excel at whatever you do. So there are probably councilmen out there that are like, and it's not always a 4. Reothamus was in a Quura of 2, so it could be any number of people. But there's probably 1 or 2 kingdoms that have Quura bonded people that are ruling, which I also find, for my headcanon, is interesting. Again, I didn't really make a lot of kingdoms and individuals, just the angels.
Would appreciate it if you don't mention Reothamus again.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Born to die. Gary Gamer 2495 says, "Oh, I don't know how you." He's Scottish. He says,
That's what they all sound like.
"Oh, I don't know where I am." Charity had a ring of mind shielding when she died. Was her soul still in it when Thrack's mentor found the ring? If so, what happened to it after? So yeah, Leah actually sent me a message after the episode and was like, "By the way, she's in the ring." You know, like, or it was like right at the beginning or somewhere right in there. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I had that moment of Hard sort of appearing, because I had mentioned to you before that at the beginning of this, one of the reasons you don't really see Hard that much is that he was just using his tower to try and figure out what was going on. He was like bopping out because he understood how to turn the wheel. So he was turning that wheel and just going to every kingdom, trying to like warn them and help them or figure out what was happening. He's the mad scientist, but he's trying to gather information. It was the first thing he did. He like just did a whole tour of the globe during your year of training. But most of the time he would arrive and everyone would be dead. At one point he arrives and he becomes he dies basically. He becomes blighted, his arm is injured. He understands that he's dead, but he's a very proficient wizard, so he's able to stave off his own death, much like the three of you were able to do. So I was like, it makes sense that he probably has something set up where he's like, what the hell just happened? And Thor's is like, oh, there's a thing in the sky. It's important. And Hard is like, okay, hang on a minute, let me check my fucking sonar. You know, like he pulls out he's a scientist, he's going to have some ability to go to the source. So he immediately shows up, looks around, finds that like this kingdom is being blighted. Mordriel's, you know, a couple of hours ahead of him, destroyed the city, and he's moving on. The zombies are flooding through. Hard picks up this ring and takes it back. So the ring, for the whole time, this whole campaign, is in the tower somewhere. And whenever I described the tower, I described that he has all these artifacts and things, because that's what he does. Hard has a bit of a wanderlust, and so, which is the irony of him not being able to come with you at the end. He collects things and he gathers things and strange trinkets and things. So probably, you know, if this was a movie, there'd be one of these like YouTube Easter egg hunters that would like pause on a frame and be like, there it is in the background of episode 1. It's hanging on that thing. You know, it's just in amongst a bunch of bullshit is the ring. The only thing is, under the sort of the law of how this works, which I actually forgot to exposit during the finale, which was maybe a little jarring for people, but Thrack comes to the conclusion while Mordriel is sort of staggered. Thrack actually becomes aware during this fight somewhere. I don't know if I think I told you this as Orcish,
you told us,
but,
I don't know if you.
But yeah, that through the power of the weave and the mastery of the tower and everything, that his friends can't come with him, or the comrades can't come with him. And if you travel to the other world altogether, your spirit has to be fully bonded to your physical form, which is why Thrack doesn't really do a lot to try and force them to come with him or come up with a better plan. He just accepts the plan and goes. The souls of this world and of the other Gaia pretty much return to the soul soup, to be, you know, regenerated, but they never do because, you know, everyone's dead. So really, as soon as Thrack turns that tower, my question is whether that soul remains or not, because the soul is trapped in the ring, just as your souls were trapped in your bodies, you know, as vessels at the end. So actually, probably Charity didn't go with the tower. The ring would have gone, but the soul would have returned to the soul soup at the end there.
I personally believe that maybe the ring is strong enough
He just wants
to with them.
As soon as that tower landed on the other side, Thrack grabbed that ring like he was in Captain Planet and just went bzzz, and she came out. The pink surprise! I mean, it's a good theory. You know, I'm okay with that mind. Yeah.
She just becomes Mordriel, being trapped in the ring for eternity. She's like, do you know what it was like to be in that ring? I've lost my Quura. You're going down.
You have no idea what I've been through. She's like a level 100 sorter at this point. She's
Pink Death.
wipes him. The pink dust.
Gary also asked, what could have happened if Cirrus had gotten a higher wisdom roll during the attempt to share relief with the angel? Here's one of those moments that could have changed absolutely everything. I think it was very possible, both for Cirrus and Thrak to have come up with a completely alternate ending. If Thrak had figured out some way to do time magic, then they certainly could have completely undone. It would have gone, everything I had planned would have gone out of the window, and we would have gone down that rabbit hole to see how they might have gone back in time. Maybe they would have traveled back and found Mordrill as a younger angel and introduced, maybe you could have done a whole thing in the other Gaia to prevent some of this. I wanted that to be very difficult, because that's like the highest level of difficulty, if anything, in the world for Thrak to attempt is sort of time magic, which is the irony of him being a time mage. But like being a true, like just weaving time like a god is extremely difficult. And the same for Cirrus.
Dormammu.
Yeah, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Or that, do you know what I liked as well? There was that, if you ever saw that show Moon Knight, the show itself was pretty mid, but there was a point where he turns time back. And it was just, I really enjoyed the visuals that they did there, where he puts his hands up and he just turns the sky. I'm sure you could just Google a GIF of this and, just find it just to look at as a visual if you don't, because I won't spoil anything about it. But the way that somebody in that does that, they turn the sky backwards to turn back time. And I was like, that is what Thrak is about to do in this moment. And I was like, man, I'm so describing it like that, because it's one of my favorite things. I think Erufir did that as well in Kingmakers. But Cirrus as well. Cirrus, I think, these guys started to posit these crazy plans that I hadn't written down. I hadn't really considered that they would be able to reason with Mordrill in such a way, because I sort of saw him as too far gone. I think I misspoke a little bit at one of the end of the episodes when I was very tired. In that Mordrill, when he first comes through the portal into this Gaia, he's not quite as far gone as he is by a year later, after he recognizes that he's still killing everything around him. And I just sort of see him as this sort of he's just an unstoppable force at this point, and he's aware of it, and he just doesn't care anymore. He's just, you're not going to get anything through to him, because he's like heard it all before, and then he lived for a millennia by himself, and then he heard it all before again. Every Quura that came before him that was able to weather his sort of AoE effects of death for long enough to have a small conversation with him, probably said similar. There was got to be people that were just as wise as some of the members of the group that had suggested similar things, and yet it still didn't happen. So why? But I do love the idea that Cirrus rolled a nat 20 there, and I know that sometimes on these checks nat 20s shouldn't count, but I always count them. And I think if you had, it could very much have affected how this went. It's one of those moments where, as a DM, you have an idea in your head and you have plans and you have lore written down, and you're like, this is probably going to go like this and probably going to go like this. And then a player will be like, I share my relief with him. And I'm in my head, I'm like, I fucking don't know what that does. I don't know what that does. I'm so incredibly underprepared for what happens here. I'm always willing to explore it, but I just have no idea. So I think in the moment, I was immediately like formulating like a version of what would happen if this succeeds. And I think it would have, I don't think at that point it would have been enough regardless to really truly turn him back. Maybe if you had done it during the Astral Sea part, it might have been enough.
Well, that's the thing, is like I couldn't, right? Because I didn't have the relief. Yeah. So it was like this moment where I thought, man, imagine like the narrative of I give relief up. I spend the whole time not knowing what it feels like. I'm like, debuffed with various things, etc. And then I just get it back and I give it away to him, return it to him immediately. And I was like, if anything could work, I was like, if anything narratively, just because it felt so narratively, it felt like a really strong thread. but you know, I rolled twice, right? Like Thrak gave me a second chance to roll, and I rolled poorly both times. And so at that point, I do kind of get a bit esoteric with stuff where I do kind of believe that the dice guide you to the story that is already written, you know, like whatever happens with the dice. Because I can't say that I've ever been in a scenario where I've gotten a bad roll or a good roll and thought that shouldn't have happened or that doesn't make sense. It's always freakishly, preternaturally like, oh, that's actually the best thing that could have happened. And like the conflicts that come from failure as well just work so incredibly well too. So I do like the idea that, I mean, for me, I think about it now is like that was like her last chance. She was like, I'm gonna do this, and it failed. And then thanks to Leah sacrificing her cool moment with the spear, which will get my goat forever. I do kind of like the idea that like then Cirrus was like, all right, then I will put you out of your mercy, or I will like put you out of your misery. I will give you mercy, and was the one to stab him in the face.
I do think that it would have been interesting to see. I think he would have felt something that he hasn't felt for a very long time, and that would have been very impactful, but maybe not enough or transformative enough in this final, you know, the 11th hour. His goal is within sight, you know, he's just got to kill a handful more people and one more angel. But I think, it would have been very interesting. I was just going to probably just open up a scene there and be like, see how he feels
what
it out.
What happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting. There's a couple of ways that I think you guys could have really changed and diverted the course of this campaign. One of them would have been joining Anaware. One of them would have been joining Mordril. You could have joined Mordril. I explained that to you guys as well before, that there was a version of this where you sided with him and then you go back to Moon, and the final arc of this is you killing everyone in Moon at Mordril's behest. So you face off against Hard and Thors and Oswald and the people of the town, and then, you know, we see Mordril destroy the Voriel was going to be the ending.
Sia really wanted to join with Anware. From all he could see this person as being, you know, like, you know, a boon, a buff, powerful. And I was like, maybe I could get like, you know, a monk with Bloodhunter points or something in here. But then Anware kept saying no to Sia. So Sia was like, you know what? Fuck you. Maybe Jordan's right. Let's kill this person.
Well, from her perspective, again, she's sort of an animal, but also her first interaction with you was in that forest, and you just were like, no, bitch, no. And so she sort of had that perspective. But again, she was, I sort of tried to play her as an alien pretending to be humane and trying to relate with you, but she's actually a very sort of malicious alien and a parasite infection. Who could definitely have given you all different boons and a different approach to power, and either we would have, you know, given you all a level and force. I was potentially going to force you all to take one multi-class level in like Warlock and just see, or just give you all like individual boons and stuff. But also by killing her, that was another way to actually get more power, because you just get an immediate 2 levels, which was the two options on the table. Theory of Games says, knowing what you know now about the final narrative, is there anything you'd have done differently with your characters in creation or major decisions earlier in the game?
Oh. I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest.
Mirggles thinks she's perfect in every way.
Yep.
Which she is.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah.
Look at her. Everyone stare at her right now. Observe her
What's the question again? One more
the
time.
question is, knowing what you know about the final narrative, is there anything you'd have done differently with your characters in creation or major decisions earlier in the game? I'll write it. It's a bit
Absolutely
longer.
not.
Yeah,
I think the fun thing about making
no.
characters is you make them as they are, and you just go on a journey with them. So like thinking about would I change anything is kind of like it does a disservice to the journey you've been on and everything the effort you put into creating a rounded character. Because that is
Yeah.
all D&D is in the end of the world. At the end of the day, if you're doing role play, a version of D&D that is you're making a character and you're seeing through their story. So you give them all these attributes. You think about how they would react in certain situations based on that, and then you just go with it and see where you end up. Like there's a long time ago, the way I thought about building a character was like, I want them to end up here. They start here, and eventually I want them to become good. But like I started realizing like that's not good. That's not good for the story. That doesn't help anything. You're just putting yourself on like a railroad, and you're not going with the flow of the story. Then you just give yourself like, here's my backstory, here's my experiences, and that will inform how I react, just like in real life. And then you can't regret anything. Then anything could have happened. Like at one point, Jordan, like Seer, I was going to join Mordreal 110%. Like between the mirror and her being confronted by Anawari directly after that, then she was 1000% thinking the only way to see this through and to get rid of this parasite is to join Mordreal and die in the process. So like she was quite happy to just join with him, and like she had no skin in the game with Quura, really. She just didn't really care. Like she's like, we talk about Seer being evil. I think Jildan was chaotic evil. She was very much...
she was literally a freaking hill horror hobo, like killing people for nothing.
So yeah, I have no regrets. I'm really glad I stuck to my guns. She was I've made an effort over the last year or so to make characters that are against my people pleaser tendencies and go with just how they would feel and like stick to their guns about stuff, and I feel like I did that with Jildan, so I'm pretty happy with where she ended up.
That's interesting. I would have changed absolutely everything.
Really?
It's just Orcish bleeding into it.
Just, I can never do anything right.
Pure bleed.
No, I think I was pretty cool with most of the decisions. As a wizard, you only get to pick 2 spells every level, and it's like you have tons of spells to pick from. So like, yeah, I mean, if you kind of know what's coming, I feel like I could have maybe had some cooler moments if I had picked certain spells instead of just like another spell that I never used. I had a ton of spells that I didn't use once. So but like that's, you can't, you just kind of, when you're picking spells as a spellcasting class in D&D, like,
You just know
like,
everything you pick will not come up. Like,
yeah,
for example,
you never know what's going to happen.
Of this, when we did that one shot and we all had these characters that, like my sorcerer, I was like, I'm not picking survival spells. They're gonna fight. I'm just gearing up for battle. And then Brad goes for the first 2 hours of the fucking that story. He's like, so none of you have any way to track anything. I'm like, no, absolutely not.
I was putting in some like fucking high DCs as well. I was like, oh, we get to do some high level shit. It's like a 30 DC 31 survival check.
Characters.
It was hilarious.
So we had to find Glizzy.
It was
to get directions.
It was so funny to me because we built them up. We built them up as these like incredible heroes, and the first thing we did was like put them out into the wilderness, and they might as well have just been eaten by a tiger, like a Family Guy skit.
Where do we go?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
But
that is, that
as
is
a
always
wizard
the
in
way.
particular, if you have speak with animals, like my bard, the first bard I ever made had a bunch of speak with animal type stuff. Never found an animal I could speak to ever. It was like infuriating.
Immediately
like,
transported to a world with no animals. Like,
exactly.
Like, we eat plants here. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's sort of D&D though, isn't it? Because it's all
Yeah.
you're not writing narratives in. You're so used to like Hollywood providing everything in a.
Never use shield because I only had 9 armor anyways. So it's
Right,
like pointless to
I
have.
think as far as the story is concerned, I wouldn't have changed anything because of the volatile nature of dice anyway, right? Even if we knew something else could have happened, it would have been a dice check and it would have been pass fail anyway. So I think I'm more than content.
For you.
Exactly.
Yeah, your rolls, dude.
I am more than content for where we ended up because like that's the story we told, and like knowing what happens, like wanting to change things, I feel like is kind of like a counter to the process of like, role playing in the first place. But as for like character choices, I would have had my backstory and everything else, but Sia would not have been a monk because like apart from hitting twice and having extra attack and like it having a point in fighter so I could use second wind, I wasn't able to use 75% of my moves because everything was stun resistant and like resistance to like most of everything. Nothing shot a missile, so I couldn't use like missile snaring, for instance. Like I was like, I've made the most useless character. I guess I have to jet again and just roleplay.
Yeah, because everything was dead.
Yeah.
Everything was either an undead creature, which all use like slam and scratch abilities, or some sort of weird blood creature that's sliming up.
Yeah.
But monks are good against like groups of men with fucking bows
humanoids,
and arrows
yeah.
and shit. Yeah, that was the thing that I also noticed, but was like, not much I can do about it. I hope Myre doesn't hate me anymore.
But like, as far as changing anything, I mean, like, I was considering retconning some of like Seer's monk abilities to make them so that he is more magically inclined in a way, but I didn't really. I mean, like in the end, I changed some of his subclasses, like maybe like after episode 5, to go from open hand monk to basically like fusing like 3 different things, just so at different levels he got different things, but they never came up anyway. But like within Seer's own like I guess build, if you want to call it that, he wasn't an open hand monk. He was like a monk of the the Seekers or whatever it was, like the group he was. Like I kind of like homebrewed his subclass, but I only really ever tried using like open hand techniques, but again, because creatures are undead, I could only knock things back. I couldn't make them go prone half the time or stun them with stunning strike. So yeah, but otherwise I wouldn't have changed anything. I would have maybe perhaps tried to do maybe again Blood Hunter, because that's like one of the few classes I haven't tried. I haven't tried Wizard properly, and I haven't like tried Blood Hunter, so I would have maybe perhaps like done one of those. Yeah.
Okay. I will make sure next time you play a game with me, everything is firing arrows exclusively at you. What are you going to... Sorry, I have a bit of apple in my mouth. I'm just eating a little bit of food here. I haven't eaten much today because I was so unwell last night and I wasn't able to eat too much. And when you start to feel slightly better and then suddenly you realize how hungry you are? It's me right now.
That's a good sign.
9:45 at night, though. What are you going to miss most about playing your character? And then off of that, what do you wish you'd been able to explore more about them? And I'll paste this into our group as well.
I would say, like being little shit, but I feel like people think I'm that
you
anyway. You
explored that pretty well, man. Do you remember when I said, like, why do I hate all of Myre's characters? And really, I was just thinking of 2. And it was...
Which ones were you thinking of?
Seer and your newspaper guy. What's his name again?
Crispin?
Guess what? They're both evil. Right?
Yeah, Crispin's pretty lawful evil. I think that's where I'd place alignment.
Crispin is lawful evil, yeah. I have
They're
a
both
tendency
lawful
of...
evil. I hate
Yeah.
lawful evil characters. Like, there's no
Myre
redeeming
loves
quality for
playing
me.
them.
For context,
I'm good chaotic.
Before people go
chaotic
pouring
good.
over like Tablestory shows, Crispin is a character that Myre plays in Wild RP, which is a Red Dead RP server.
Howdy, the name's Crispin.
Go and watch
Crispin
all
Canterbury.
of his VODs.
He's like he's a newspaper guy, and he's a jerk. He'll do anything to get the story. Like, he's just...
He'll do anything to swindle money out of you and lie to your
Yeah.
face.
I love money.
I think I can play it. Yeah, he's terrible, horrible person.
Anything for a dollar bill, yo.
I hate that guy. And I hated Seer, really, honestly. But well done.
I thought you were talking about Clark as well from Wild RP.
No,
But,
Clark was
I guess
pretty
you
different.
didn't really experience Clark. Exactly.
Clark isn't lawful evil. Clark's... I don't even think he's evil. I think he's just neutral. He's chaotic
Isn't
neutral.
that guy arrested?
He's the...
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
the demon guy.
Yeah, demon guy. The swamp devil.
That's right.
Yeah.
The devil in the bayou. Sorry.
I'd say, to answer the question, because we don't have an infinite amount of time, I wish we could have explored more of the tavern-based, like, town stuff, like the real goofy stuff, because that was pretty fun. Like the first episode zeros, we had, or at least I had a lot of fun. I had my stupid little crosswords. I had like a lot of ideas of like how I was going to interact with the like baker, the tavern people, and like how to really show Jordan's like actual fully selfishness through all those interactions and stuff. Like her whole point was like she will use people to get her way consistently and irredeemably. She was a horrible, selfish person. And we didn't really get to explore much of that, like just because of the nature of the campaign. So I kind of wish we'd been able to see more of like just who they were on a day-to-day basis instead of like crisis. But that's just D&D. Like that's most D&D campaigns with a story. There's just there's a crisis and you're reacting to it. So
well, if I could do it again and I'd had a sort of uncapped amount of time in which to run this, which technically I do, but we don't really want to make it an endless campaign for the sake of it being a show as well. I would, if I went back and was going to run this, my character again, I would probably just do endless flashbacks. Just every few episodes is like, you know, every fourth episode is a flashback to one of these characters during the alive times of the world, you know, and just seeing what they're up to and who they look like and stuff. Just exclusively for that. I will never run another thing like this again. I've learned so many lessons as a DM from this show. Like it is pretty rough. It's a lesson I learned a really long time ago as well. Like always give them an NPC nearby. And then I just completely did away with it. And I was like,
you killed all the NPCs like on the first episode.
But I also, and to sort of backhanded compliment all of you a little bit, part of my brain going into this was like, they're so good at role playing, I can just leave. I could just leave. And before we ever did an episode 0, this was just my opinion on the 4 of you going into this. So I was like, I don't need to worry about my NPCs. It doesn't matter, you know, which is a massive oversight, because while that is true,
because you guys sucked actually.
I'm waiting for the backhand. I'm like,
well, it's more like I guess it's not a backhanded compliment. It's just you know, like an oversight on my part in that NPCs can serve a completely different role and can provide there's a lot that they can do to flesh out a world, and without them it's actually very difficult to DM. This was quite hard to DM without as many NPCs in it. And I'm weirdly, a lot of people like my NPCs when I roleplay as NPCs and stuff, but I don't even think about them or care about them, because I'm like, the players are real people. Why do my NPCs matter? I'm sitting here being like, and the wind is cold and it smells like snow, you know, and like, and I just want to shut up and just, you know, let you guys get into something. So I kind of went into this like, whenever they just want to do some roleplay, I can just literally leave the scene. But actually,
you need one Scottish Rambler per campaign.
Which we got.
Oh, my
eventually.
name's Gluzzy on the yeah. My wife has done cheated on me with a man named Peanut.
Yeah.
That wasn't Glizzy's voice. Glizzy's voice was... Sorry.
I don't remember it.
Actually.
Sort of a
Actually.
drunk on purpose.
I'm Scottish with this voice.
Tell you about the
I
Scottish.
told you one thing I don't know.
I want to hear if Cirrus and Thrak have any answers to those questions, though. Like, is there anything about your characters you wish you could have explored more in the show itself?
I think Cirrus ended up being like way more empathetic and like soft than I originally anticipated her to be. And when she gave up relief, I was like, okay, she's gonna like go through periods of time where she becomes like, as the campaign goes, she's gonna become more and more irritable, and it's gonna change her personality back to like who she was before, which is like aggressive and, you know, fiery and all that kind of stuff. And then that just didn't happen. Like, I intended on doing it and I didn't do that.
Why?
I was like, I don't know, man. I think it's like
Yeah, Mergs, why?
I'm not interrogating, I'm just curious.
Here's what it was. When we finally were introduced to Mordriel, I was like, what are the ways to beat him? And one of the ways that I decided would be most effective was empathy, and that was because Cirrus had some stuff in her backstory, which I think she mentions, like she has significant loss and responsibility in that loss in her backstory. And so I think what happened was, instead of her being like fiery and angry, I think she just kind of transitioned into like wise sage cleric mode. And I think she thought, like, if I reflect back the things that I need to hear about my loss and my responsibility in that loss and that sort of thing, maybe that will help him.
And you also just looked at the rest of us and went, none of those people are capable of empathy. So it's down to me.
I was like,
OOC, not our characters. Like the people she's role playing with. These monsters, they can't pull that off.
Like, we have, we have the option to fight him, or we have the option to help him. And if we're gonna do that, I think that's how I decided that. And then the more he said, the more I felt empathy, and I found myself as Cirrus feeling that empathy and wanting to help. And then I think that's just kind of like naturally how she ended up being. She ended up being like way more self-sacrificing than I intended her to. And I think it happened by accident a little.
Did it feel natural though? Like that's where the character just felt like that's where you went to go? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But this is the problem, is like it's probably just transference from me, you know, like a lot of I think just how much of my own reactions came into her. I don't really know. Like I kind of
The old orcish blade.
The old
orcish blade.
I think I'll miss playing her unshakable. One thing that was very important for me with her was I didn't want her story to be that of losing faith. I didn't want that to be part of her narrative, because I think it just didn't make sense. There's literally angels. She can literally see and connect with the angel. It's like, how difficult is it to like lose faith? But there were a couple of moments where I was like, she could really have her faith shaken here permanently. But I don't know why. I just decided a long time ago that I didn't want that to be her story. It wasn't about losing faith. It was about like maintaining faith in the face of the most extreme circumstances where it would make no sense for you to do it. But you may still have the chance to give this evil creature relief just because you have that faith. Like if she didn't have it, then she wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think it was, I'll miss that kind of aspect of her for sure. I talk too much. Orcish, speak.
No, you were asked a question.
Yeah, it's a question. You were answering it. Orcish, your turn. Make it snappy.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No. Yeah. Someone used up all the time. God.
Start playing the music to like get you off the. Off them.
What are you going to miss most about playing your character? I really enjoyed playing a wizard. I think wizard's a really cool class. And what I liked about Thrak is that I rolled really well on HP. Like he had a surprising amount of hit points. I had to sacrifice some of it throughout the story, but like I know everyone describes wizards as like he's got 9 HP and 10 AC. It's like you hit him once and he's dead, but Thrak could take a couple of hits. So I felt I don't know. I felt really good about mechanically about playing a wizard that way, and I was pretty happy with that. And just it's really fun to be able to explore all the different spells that wizards can cast, and I could have been way more creative with him than I was. I was just like, what spells hurt, do damage, me orc green. But more than that, I'm really just gonna miss like role playing every Tuesday with my buddies. And
yeah, what?
I was talking about chat.
Right.
You fucking leeches up here.
Chat who openly hate you.
That you have campaigned for that, Brad.
Yeah. That's
done
how I know.
They hate me because of you. You lie about me
every single day.
And I'm not going to answer the other part of that question.
Okay.
So,
Deciduous
moving on.
Pine says,
Okay.
Leah, this is the exact words it says. So how did Jildan still seemingly show indignation despite having given it up?
Okay, I have an answer for this. Right, okay. So indignation was chosen for some pretty deep reasons, which of course were not really obvious when she gave them up. But she felt indignation was like holding her back because she felt indignation over the loss of Elneus. So all this time she's like been missing Elneus. She has no idea where he is, and she's angry about it. She's like, why me? Like, why have I been forsaken like this? Why has he abandoned me? And she's on this kind of quest to go find him, basically. That's her whole point. That's why she's in Moon. She's trying to find Elneus. And like, you know, trying to figure out why he abandoned her. And she thought it was all just a sick, weird joke. But like, you know how there's that part of you when something happens and like part of you's like, ha, that's kind of crazy, right? Surely that's not happening. And all the other part of you that's like, fuck this is like ridiculous. Are you kidding me? And like, they're usually mashing with each other. So like half of Jildan is this like, tee it couldn't possibly be the answer. And also, what the fuck? So she knew that was holding her back. And when she gets this whole thing of like, hey, you guys are gonna, you know, save the world together, tee and she knows that Sirius is next to her thinking about giving up on hope or whatever, or faith or something insane. And she's like, if I don't give up what's holding me back, we might actually be completely doomed here. So that was part one of the reasoning why she gave that up. But then she goes through that, but it's that two-tier thing again. She's like, haha, well, it's not real though, is it? Like, she doesn't believe in any other gods. She sees like any worship of other gods, which is why she was so weird about the blood god. She was so weird about like, any worship. She didn't want people to even touch her when they were related to another god because she was so devout to Elneus that she didn't really want any part of giving anything away to another god. Like that seemed like sacrilegious to her in a weird way. But also there was this kind of like, but what if it is real? And what if I have to give up and I have no choice? So she didn't really want to believe that she was giving it up. And I think, but part of her kind of knew that giving it up was a good thing. Like it would help them all massively. So maybe it would be a good thing if she did. So yeah, there's this kind of war. She felt like guilty ultimately that she had given something up or attempted to. She felt like it was betraying Elneus. So she kind of kept the ruse up so that in the hopes that maybe it would change something and she would be a better person for it. But in the end, she was just like, no, this is bullshit. Like, I don't feel anything. I'm not different. This is just me doing this. I am the one that has changed, like I have done for how long I've been alone. I did everything for myself. I stopped being indignant for the greater good. The gods have nothing to do with it, and they never have ever. It's always just been me. So yeah, so it never disappeared through godly interaction. It was just this like mixture of like hope and guilt and horrible other things coming together where she's lying to herself and like, I don't know, maybe it's hopium. Maybe it did go away. Yee! But it didn't, so that's why she was indignant.
So much.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Why did you choose to make Brad's angel underpowered by making her indignant?
I think it's all faith-based, right? Like, maybe she didn't get anything from the angel, and she didn't give anything up in the first place. Yeah.
I'm just playing. It's fair enough.
Deciduous also said, did Mordril just stay all along after killing the second guy, stuck for the rest of time? I mean, we don't know, right? That's the thing, is that the show ended. So, you know, I didn't write any more after that. In my head canon, I would imagine so. But I don't know. He's extremely capable and very smart as well. He's got access to the weave and stuff. But the point of Mordril is that he's flawed in a way that this group wasn't. In that he could kind of do what Thrak could do, but not to Thrak's level. Maybe he doesn't have the creative element, or something like that. He never had the. He sort of lost. He was faithless by the end of this thing because he wants to kill the gods, so he doesn't have the access to, whatever we want to call Sirius's hand thing. So for me, it was really down to every time they slipped up and would mention something, that was him being informed. That was the rules of how magic worked in this world. You had to be taught or informed or shown it. Once you see it, it exists. Schrodinger's magic. And so for him, my headcanon is probably is trapped. You imprisoned him. You know, he can't die, so what else can you do with a creature like that? Really, the only way to win was to either send him to the God world, which might have had worse repercussions, we don't know, or trap him here. He has really got no choice. You know, even if you sort of empathize with him a bit at the end, what can you do? He's a
Is it
immoral
possible he could bring life as well as death, right? That's kind of his thing. Like he did once to us. He kind of answered our prayers as this god of life. Like he has that possibility. Is it possible that if he got enough of a, you know what, fuck you, you've trapped me here, he would just keep resurrecting the Quura that died, trying to fight him at the end just to torture them some more and let them die over and over again, so they're all locked in the horrendous cycle of pain and torment together?
I mean, yeah. I like the idea of being trapped in jail with him is, you know, you three are trapped in there with him forever as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He so the way that I had his ability to control life is he has a very limited ability to do it because that was not his job when he was an angel. He sort of has some idea of it and some ability there, but his ability to kill is just so much more powerful that it trumps his ability to sort of restore much faster. So he has that thing where anything within like 500 feet of him is just going to die anyway. So I think regardless, unless you know, get 500 feet away from him and just never go near him, your bodies would have rotted away and atrophied eventually. And so I think you would only have been stuck with him for a certain amount of time. Eventually, he would end up alone. I think the three of you would certainly have died after a while. But, I mean, again, it's D&D, right? You never know. You guys probably would have come up with some crazy shit that I could never have predicted in a million years. And then, you know, I would have had to deal with it in the moment, 2 hours into the session.
I have to say this because when he fell, like when we killed him the first time, here's what I thought was going to happen. You started to describe something and I lost my mind because I thought you were going to say that we succeeded in killing him, and because he was also the angel of life, he was able to bring life in his death back to the planet. Like that's what I thought the like sort
That's
of like,
the like
twist was going to be.
Collect every Riddler trophy ending and get the super secret ending, the secret alternate ending unlock. No, he's not really an angel of life. That was his sister. He is just an angel of death. And in the end there, he becomes the true angel of death. Like just that is all he is capable of. So yeah, the final form that he takes is he's just pure death. That's the point of him. Someone did break it down really well in the Discord throughout the week. They sort of said, like, you know, and it wasn't, I don't think it was a question, it was just someone theory crafting on what Mordrill represents. And my opinion of Mordrill is that he just represents death. Like that is what it is. It's an inevitable thing. You can fight it, as you can take your supplements and you can try and, you know, go on a daily walk, but one day it's going to get you. You might live to 110. It's going to get you. So that was kind of the point of him. They suggested as well that he sort of represented like depression and that the blight is that kind of thing. And I did seed some of that stuff in this, which is more of a hangover from the original reason, that idea that I had for the thing, for the show as an overarch. But generally speaking, the presence of Mordrill was always just supposed to be a representation of death, you know, against mortality. You can hold out as long as possible, and you can, you know, eventually it's going to whittle you down. And I think that, personally, I think that to be true for probably what happened with the three that remained. But I don't know. I didn't write that part. You can write a fanfic. Piranha says, how much more convincing would Mordrill have needed to be in order to win over anyone or the whole team? So we know he sort of already won over Jildan. What about the rest of you? We're going to quick fire the rest of these questions off as well. So quick fire round. How much more convincing would he have needed to be to actually draw you over to his side? I guess probably around the campfire conversation episode.
I think that he at the campfire, I don't know. I feel like he would never have been able to really get Cirrus 100%. There were a couple of moments where there was definitely some, interest, but overall, I think it would be the antithesis to Cirrus for her to have ever agreed to work with him. So probably not at all. You would have to have rolled like a nat 100 or something.
Okay.
So
And just changed her character.
Yeah.
Yeah, just changed her personality.
I almost offered, as Thrak, I almost offered to him, hey, like, if you spare the rest of the planet, I'll figure out how to take you to the gods right now. But in that conversation, I can recall, and this was before I knew I could take anyone to the gods, but I kind of had theorized that if anyone could, it would be Thrak, and like I could figure it out eventually. Because I knew that they were somewhere, and that they existed. So yeah, I think that if he had agreed to stop killing everyone, that Thrak would have helped him find the gods and just been like, yeah, go crazy, man. If he could if he felt like he could trust him.
At this point, Seer knew that, like, because of the Quura bond, it would take more than just Seer to agree to join. And so at that moment, Seer did not join Mordriel because he knew that he'd be damned if he did, damned if he didn't. And part of him was like, well, yeah, sure, I could join Mordriel, I suppose. But I guess he didn't necessarily need to choose because he knew that it was a package deal sort of thing. And if he was to try, then yeah, like that's why he didn't.
Okay. Quick fire round. So these are questions that we're taking live from the chat room, from that people have put through while we've begun the stream here. Rain is nice. Which other Tablestory actor would you enjoy seeing as your Quura character?
Aaron Black.
I mean, he was already in it.
They should have just casted Aaron over me. 100%.
Aaron plays mysterious wizards really well. Like, it's
Yeah.
just really silly how unfair it is.
Honestly, I think Leah could have been a really sick Cirrus.
I don't know. I don't think I could have stuck to Cirrus's character the way you did. I feel like you're so committed to who Cirrus was. I feel like I would have caved at one point and got bored with, like, because I just get bored. I get bored of like being serious all the time. I think I could have done it. I think you did.
It is tough.
I don't know how to word it. Like it's hard. Like you do a really, really good job of like really committing seriously to who you are, and that's like there's a lot to be said for that. So I don't think I could have done Cirrus justice at all, quite honestly. Yeah. I don't know who would play.
Who played Jolden? Wack could play Jolden, just be Master Roshi, right? Horny turtle guy. Who do you think could play Seer? I mean, like,
Orcish could have played Seer. I
Yeah?
think Orcish could have played Seer. Yeah.
I probably could have played Seer.
I think you would have had a lot of fun
I'm
playing
very
Seer,
good
to be
at being
honest.
contrarian. That's true.
I'd
But
like to see
Seer was more
Cord
passive,
play.
but still.
Cord play Jordan would have been funny to me. Because I
Cord is
think
Jolden.
Cord would have added a really different spin to it. I think that he would have committed in a completely different way, and I think that would have been interesting
Yeah.
to look at.
A good
He is a
question.
visual learner.
I don't know why I
Yes.
would love to see Fist of the Walrus play Cirrus. Just
Fist of the Walrus as Cirrus. Tune into the Christmas special.
I put my hand on the ground.
I am a
Let me
gnome.
take your pain away.
Fist of the Walrus as Justice Christ.
That would have worked way better.
That's my headcanon.
Okay, Deciduous Pine says that raises an interesting question. What did Mordriel did to his and his sister's versions on this side? What did Mordriel do to his sister's version on his and his sister's version on this side? I mean,
Did we
again,
talk about that? We might have discussed that briefly in a green room or
I
something.
think it was in
feel
the
like.
show, actually. I think describing finding his sister, losing his sister, then finding his sister, and she was like some
Yeah.
half-formed, soulless creature, like
He
thing.
did not like
and he
that.
was like,
Yeah.
what
That was
the fuck?
so it was actually the tree in the it was Silthus, the tree that is where the virtuous four are from. But it's the same thing, I think, with just about every angel on this side. He would have encountered, you know, these angels are just, they're weird things. They're not kind of, you know, the angels are sort of borderline humanoid creatures. I'm not entirely fully sure what they exactly look like on Mordriel's Gaia. I'm sure that they would have been quite alien looking as well. But on this side, you know, they're things like a mountain or a hill or a river. Some of them are like birds. Some of them are like elemental things. But, you know, he's just like, he flies over to, so Mordris and Mordriel on this side are similar to Voriel. They are like these things that are at the peaks of two mountains on the kingdom of Marble, which is where the Githyanki are from in this saying.
Okay.
So if any of you had pulled Githyanki, that's where you would have been. You would have had some mad insight knowledge. I would have had to rewrite everything. Surprised you didn't suggest that, Mergs. So Mordris and Mordriel appear at two different locations. Mordris is at the peak of the highest mountain, and Mordriel is at the tip of the northern shore. But they are just these fucking things that it's not like he rolls up to them in his dragon form and is like, "Hey guys," and they're just like, you know, he finds like a floating ball in the sky or just a giant pig, and he's like, I know, because he's sort of sonar sensing that they are who he thinks they are. He's like, this is me, you know. He's like, he finds one that's him, which I'm sure would have been an interesting scene to see, and it's not something I ever wrote down, so this is as much in my imagination as yours and whatever. But yeah, he recognizes who they are. He can sense who they are. He senses Silthus and is like, you're not Silthus, but you are. I you know, it'd be like a dog smelling you and you just had surgery, like facial reconstruction surgery or something, and you'd be like, okay, I know who you are, but you look so different. And then they just die, you know, because he can only be near them for so long before it kills them. So, you know, it's just that across the world, I think, every time he just rolls up until eventually he's like, oh, another one, this is going to hurt, you know. And I think the first few times it probably messed him up, but by the end of it, he was like committed to this genocide.
So I have two questions then. So in the finale, like Voriel, Mordriel was like perched on Voriel. Does that mean that when we showed up, Voriel was dead?
No, Voriel was alive. We didn't see Voriel die.
Okay. I thought that Mordriel was perched on him when he...
No, he's perched on
No,
a mountain,
not
not on Voriel.
A mountain, not on the mountain.
So
okay, secondly, yeah.
Well, Mordriel knew the length of his AoE, so he's perched just far enough outside of town that his AoE isn't killing everyone inside. Because he was just doing the like come and see me thing to you guys at that point.
Secondly, Mordriel says how ironic it is that like in this world that Voriel was like the last angel to die, whereas Voriel in his world was the first to die. And so before you talked about how they weren't necessarily the same in terms of form, I was like, how can a mountain rush to death? And I was like, in my mind, like in the episode, I was like, what did Voriel look like back then? And you're like, how does that? So how do you make a mountain angel into an evil, fast-moving paladin? And I'm like, yeah. So like, what did Voriel look like?
I don't know. In my head canon, probably like Braum from League of Legends. He's probably just got like a huge shield or something. But I don't know. I didn't commit. I purposefully tried not to give any angel other than Mordriel form. And that's only because he's in this world. So he takes 3 forms, and we get an idea twice of what I think is close to what he might have looked like on the other side. With he has like gnarled tree root legs, and wings and stuff. So he's probably kind of humanoid. And maybe a lot of the other angels are, but then I imagine a lot of them are very, very Evangelion, you know, like just this thing appears that's just a square in the sky that screams, and you're like, okay, you know, that's that angel, and you know, that's just what they were. on the other side. But yeah, I purposefully kept it very ambiguous, and even when I was, you know, creating all the intros and things, they're just like referenced as balls of light and stuff. The lizard folk look like lizard folk though. What's the coolest angel we never saw? For me, it's probably the wandering murderer, which I'll scroll. I meant to scroll and find.
That doesn't speak to you at all. Like, what? Speak to your character or anything?
The wandering murderer. I like the angel Churu, which is the angel of Caladuran of the deep tunnels with the gnomes, which is just a giant millipede basically that rumbles through the tunnels endlessly. I really enjoyed that we saw Vol, the river of blood. I thought was a cool angel. I like all the ones that are just like weird. One of them's a book. One of them is a set of hills. I like the one that's a cat. I reference it so many times just because I love the idea that it's just a cat. It's just an invincible, immortal cat that lives on an
Egyptian
island.
style.
Yeah, he's just literally doing that, just sitting in the corner, like, you know, licking his hand.
Old Bastet.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them were like pretty metal. There was one of the Goliath angels is the blood-winged beast, which is just a giant humanoid with 6 arms and 6 wings that's made entirely of constantly turning blood. Like, that's just what it is. Very similar, I think, probably to Big Boar. So yeah, like that. So those were kind of some of the evil ones. There's a unicorn. The Turtle village that Jildan is from is that they actually worship Father Earth and the angel Ka, which is a giant turtle, but they all live on it, kinda. You know. So yeah, like some of them I thought were quite interesting, and you know, I like a few of them I pulled from existing religions and mythos. A few of them I just made up myself. A lot of them were inspired by, you know, like I would look up something like the Wild Wanderer, who is a gnomish forest gnome god in the Forgotten Realms, and I would just find an interesting element and then just take that and then just make up something interesting off of that, and it would be very similar to what you might find in existing laws that are out there. We had Amaterasu, which was Brunor's angel, the angel that is just a sunshine. It's just sunshine. It's a golden sphere that sits in the sky and just makes it daytime all the time. So yeah, I enjoyed making a lot of those, and just sitting and writing up endless angels and thinking of how they might be kind of like strange aliens, what effect
Found
that
the
would
cat
have.
angel.
There it is.
She was here the whole time.
Because my favorite thing about world building for this was imagining this world. I think this game would have been so cool to run just in the, like, I'm not even writing off one day running a session of, you know, or like a small campaign in this world before it's destroyed, because I really enjoyed the idea of creating some of these angels that people build their civilizations around, you know, like that massively influential element to their culture. So for orcs, there's this boar that directly influences their minds, so they just chase it around on horses and wargs and stuff all day. And then there are people that just build their towns around these energy sources, like the Phoenix Angel. And so creating an angel and then thinking about the culture around it, and then thinking about what impact that might have on the world at large, was one of the most enjoyable parts of world building for this for me. So I made a lot of those angels, and a lot of them are just a couple of lines, and a few of them are a bit more in depth, especially the ones that you had to meet. Shadow the Wreck God says the show had reportedly many references to other works. To the cast, do you have a proudest find, if shareable? And to Brad, Was there a particular one you were happy to be found or sad to be missed? This happens. This is just part of it for me. I'll just knock out mine real quick here. I put endless references in this to the point where I've forgotten half of them by this point. And someone will be like, "Was that a reference to blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was. It was. I did write that in. Yeah." But yeah, I don't know. A lot of the time they're not so direct that I would be surprised if you even picked up on any of them, to be honest.
You know those people who are like really, really good at like, that's a reference to this, and then they quote like a whole paragraph from a film or a monologue or a book or something.
Yeah.
They deconstruct it like, that's a reference to this poem from 1890 by this person. What's the opposite of that? Because that's me.
That's me.
I don't
I'm so
understand
bad at that.
anything ever unless it's about my two interests, Final Fantasy and or music. There's nothing like it's straight over my head.
I noticed a lot of the like King Arthur ones, like Mordriel, Mordred, Mordris. I think there's like Morgana is also in there. So I thought that was super interesting. Like
Riothamus is King Arthur, by the way. And his brother is Lancelot. In Welsh, I think is what the reference was there. Yeah, there's a lot of King Arthur stuff.
Yeah, so that was fun. I'm trying to think of anything other than that.
There's an interesting question in chat about the whole Quura. Is the sequel going to be called Curaga?
Curaga.
100%. Yeah.
The only reference I ever understood. Continue.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I enjoyed the Norse references. I liked the whole like Gungnir and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's the one with Fenrir literally tattooed on my arm. I enjoyed all of those little nods. Carry on.
I didn't understand anything about what was going on. I
watched
literally
Vinland
just
Saga
faked it
exclusively
the
to
entire
try and get into the mindset of like what it's like to live
Vinland
in
Saga
Moon.
is a
That was
That's a
like
really good show, dude.
So I think because I had just watched Vinland Saga before this show, and it like altered my life. And I remember when we did the first episode and you said that my cleric leader's name was Thor's, I just about near passed out.
Direct reference.
So yeah, I was like, oh my god. So that was very fun for sure.
Yeah, I had a lot of Norse stuff in there because they are based on Norse mythology. There are other areas of the world that were like based on Chinese mythology, Hindu mythology, and I put a lot of that stuff in there, not in an attempt to just sort of be weird about it, but I just think sometimes it can be fun when you recognize, because I'm really not doing a direct influence or anything. It's more just like an interesting name or a little something, so that if you're watching it and either you understand the history or the mythos about something, or maybe you are actually part of the religion, and maybe you hear a name that you recognize for something, it's kind of fun, right? When I was a kid, I loved it. I loved watching things or reading books about stuff, and I would just be like, I know what that means, or I recognize that word. So that's kind of why I do it a lot of the time, just because I think it can be an interesting way to watch the show, is that you pick up on a name. There's nothing more to it. You're just like, oh, Shanti. That's cool. And that's it. It isn't, anything more than that. But I do that quite a lot with stuff. I also am just so inspired by a lot of random things. Like these are all these shows that I run are just a bunch of bullshit that I've got in my head over years of watching TV shows and playing games and stuff. And then I'm sure that we could pick apart almost every single thing I've done and attribute it to be something, if we had some sort of like insane computer
That's everyone
that could do
and
that.
everything.
Right.
That's like literally every story.
It's very hard to
anything.
to create a truly original thing.
I genuinely think it's impossible.
At this point, it might be, yeah.
Yeah.
Riviera Leon says, to the cast, do you have a favorite moment or scene from the show? Quick fire round.
Quick fire round.
It's been a year. How much
It's hard,
time
yeah.
has it been?
Favorite anything always stumps me. I'm just like, my mind wipes immediately. Normalizer.
Jilden's thirst.
I'm still
Jilden
blanket
saying no
Jilden's
to
thirst.
Anoware. Like the interaction at the end where Jilden like basically released herself from the chains of Anaware, and like that whole metaphor and the analogy behind it, and like all of the emotions that went into it after knowing that character for as long as we did, it was incredibly satisfying. And like,
to go one
very
step
moving.
further, for it to have been Cirrus with her, literally her faith the whole time, which Jordan has kind of ragged on for so long, to be the one who actually freed her in the end was really like something special as well, because she would have died right there and then if it wasn't for Cirrus, which she knew implicitly. But my favorite part, I think, remembering back, was the PvP between Seer and Thrak, when he got really, really angry at Thrak that one time.
Oh, yeah.
Was that with the mirror?
Totally wasn't thinking about that for a week after. By the time we came back the following week, I had a contingency plan. I was like, okay, all right, I think I can survive a wisdom check and survive final hour and kill him in one go.
But just imagine, like, Seer, the smug look on Seer's face as Thrak's holding him by the throat, and he's just like, you know I'm right. And Thrak's like, ah! It's just, it was beautiful. I loved it.
I had to DM
so many really
Orcish like I think a week after that,
You
saying,
can
"Hey,
kill
by
me.
the way, Orcish, I love you.
Oh no.
I think you're
ignored him.
cool."
I ignored him.
Is that
You
in
did.
I
blocks?
haven't spoken to him since. I'm still upset
my
about it.
God.
Like, that fucking character, man. It makes so much sense that he's evil, by the way. I'm just kidding. That was a fun scene.
Any regrets? I'm still thinking about regrets. Sorry. I regret
Oh,
not
I
using the
wish.
Frog's Friend band.
Yeah.
I had that thing. I could have turned into a frog and been a frog, and that would have been
True. Yeah.
random and pointless, but I would have been a frog.
Yeah, we had got a lot of little things like early on that we just never. Like, I don't think did Cirrus ever use her bracelet?
Nope.
Did
That's blood magic of
Jildan?
another religion. She would never.
Jildan
Yes.
did.
She
was
Jildan
pushing
did
it.
after she figured out the truth about Anaware. Yeah. Then she was like, oh, what the fuck am I saving myself for? The world's ending. There's no gods. Whatever, man. Chwing.
Yeah.
There was like a whole bit about like when Cirrus got bit by the vampire and she like freaked out about like the purity of her blood and her blood being like taken from her and tasted and stuff. And so when we went through the
that's not for you.
blood,
Well,
yeah,
that was
there's
another
a
great
lot of-
moment where Cirrus almost killed the Darrow. Was it the Darrow? I don't know what happened. The blood god,
Oh,
where
yeah.
Anaware was whispering in Cirrus's ear, and Cirrus was about to do something crazy.
Yeah,
that was
that's right.
really cool. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
I like the moment where like
Rapid
when-
fire.
Sadly, it's a Seer moment, but like I like that
Sadly.
moment in the I don't want to be about me and my character, but I
I want it
liked
to
when
be about you
Brad
and your character.
brought up Sika Ralva and you know, that whole thing with you know, like the illusion, that back and forth between Seer and what's the demon called again?
Anawari.
Anwari, that's the one. Yeah, in that form was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, trying to get into your heads for that part when I was waiting for you all to separate and you did it naturally and it was great. You were like, we all have a bicker and leave and go separate ways. I was like, oh my God, thank you. What the fuck? Like, there are so many times that I'm like quietly fucking weaving, trying to just like, try and get you to go over there.
I
and you go
love
over
that moment so much because you're like, I trust you. And I'm like, she'd never say I trust
Fuck
you.
this.
And you're like,
yeah, that was good. I actually really enjoyed. There were two things that I enjoyed as well. One was I really enjoyed Sirius's death scene that we've spoken about already. That was just a really interesting. The way that it worked out, and then with the time rewind was just like incredible. Because it was nutty for me to GM as well, because I was like, okay, here we go. I'm revealing the big bad guy. I wasn't really prepared to do it. Not fully. I didn't expect it to happen, and I was like, "Fuck! Is it? What do I do? What would he say? This is it. He's gonna grab them because he's, you know, gonna ferry them across, and offer them to join him." And so, I revealed a bunch of fucking stuff about him, and then it got rewound, and I was like, "That's crazy," because now we all know. But they don't, and I was like, "This is that what the fuck do I do with this?" It was a really interesting DMing moment for me. I also just enjoyed every time Leah would just fucking slam us with like a bit of philosophical off the fucking dome,
what the hell,
gut wrenching,
so insane,
life changing fucking wisdom sentence. And she
Bro,
just
I'm just saying shit.
she's sitting there on her phone, you know, and they'd be like, what do you think, Jilden? And she'd be like, the world is nothing but a pear, and a pear is not shaped as a perfect sphere, and everything doesn't come around the way you... And you're like, what the fuck? And you change fundamentally as a human. She would just like whap one out every now and then, and you're just like, fuck, dude, that was insane. Every now and then, Jilden would just lay down wisdom.
That's completely different to you, though. Because, like,
Old woman.
you do have that perspective. Because you're like... I'm thinking about the world quite differently to how I usually would. That's so interesting. Like, I see things just so differently.
Yeah.
And you have that slightly different perspective, but it's also like such an old woman thing to do. You ever speak to an old person and that, you know, one that's just like really wisdom and has lived a life? They're just like, you change. You change.
You know what? I'm glad
develop.
that came through in a way, because like it was in the sort of treatment I gave the character in the beginning. It was very much like I'd like her to have these moments of like just that old wisdom, but I was like, I don't know if I can pull that off, so I'm not going to make that a deliberate thing, because I don't know if I
Scary,
tried to,
innit?
it would
Yeah.
come across really like forced and bad. But if you just let it happen, maybe it will work out, and it sort of did. So
it
Yippee.
did.
It was so good.
Question for Myre from Debiru. Not sure if this was asked already, but were his forehead eyes only based around him using his key, or did it have further meaning?
It had further meaning, but I also used it like in that whole like sense of like, you know, one key point is one eye opening, but it also had other meaning to the character too, which I don't think we're going to go into because we could at some other time.
We'll do the DLC episode one day, maybe.
DLC.
I'm making no
But,
promises because I always intend to do these things, and then Whack comes in and it's like, here's your schedule for 2025,
15.
and I'm like,
Level 15?
Fuck.
Like, doing it level 15?
and
I will
table
say
story
that, like,
scheduling, not
Level 15?
leveling up.
Yeah, as far as like other character things, like, you know, we're talking about how Brad puts references and things, like within my character there are things, but like generally as a player, if I ever play a character, those things are kind of like for me. If somebody picks something up, then they do, but it's never really out there. Like, for instance, Seer's surname is Serir. That's because there's somebody else, like, you know, within like Mensa Branson called like from House Durniv, and Serir is from House Durniv, and there's a house that fell and stuff. That's why I picked the name, but you'd have to like, you know, read Faerun books to know anything about that. But otherwise, yeah.
But it's I feel like the thing
secrets.
is, when you do that kind of thing, it's incredibly neat when you do actually figure it out. If you're viewing something and you piece together something like that, that little element. I love shows that do that and games that will do that. And if you are able to go, hang on, is that a reference to that? And when you find out it is, there's something so nourishing about that. When you're like, oh, that's a reference to a thing I love. Oh, that's dope. Or a thing I know about or I'm interested in. I think I loved it. It's why I do it as much as I possibly can in these things.
If anybody read Shadowdale, The Scouring of the Land, that one was for you.
There you go. All right, last question. If there was and this is from Rigor412, if there was a death, would the Quura bond have no longer worked against the wave of death each round in the final fight? Yeah, that was kind of the plan. So it's kind of one of those things where I have to be aware of the fact that I need all four of these people to come back and play next week. You know, like if I kill one of them off, what are they going to play their Darrow or what? Like, so it was like there's an element to
Bobby
it
the
where
backup bod.
in probably if we were to just go like full realism, the truth is that the three of them probably would never have come back to their bodies, and Thrank would have gone on from that point on alone. But, you know, obviously, I don't want... We're in the, you know, the last leg of the show. I don't want you to make new characters. I don't think, you know, you could be bothered. No one wants to have to learn all these new characters and stuff. We want to see these three characters continue with the story. So, you know, I sort of twisted some of the stuff to make sense and figured out a way that, you know, you were able to continue with it. There's a lot of different ways that I was going to approach death with this because I wanted it to be a possibility. Because I wanted the option for Mordrill to show up and be like, look, I don't actually offer this bargain to anyone. For the most part, he actually only has control over creatures that don't have souls. And so there are actually beings in this Gaia, the one that you're from, who don't have souls. And when they die, they actually remain. like Bruno, because he was a serial killer. You know, so the reason that he, you know, or part of the reason he was a serial killer by life, or by day, by night, was because he was a soulless being. He was the exact opposite of a Quura. You have like the oldest souls that exist, and he just didn't have one, but was alive still and moving around, and you know, wasn't like a spaced out. He was just kind of the lizard folk of this world. So Mordriel is able to control beings just immediately who don't have souls. He can bring them under his influence. But he actually offered to you guys, and was going to offer that, you know, join me and give you a temporary life thing, like, which is what you kind of got anyway. Yeah, my plan was for if you were to go into the final fight and maybe, you know, we had fully killed off one of you and you were playing a different character, which I was going to try and, you know, quietly push that we don't do. I always wanted to see these same 4 characters because I knew that I could play with death a lot in this. So I knew that if you just died on death saves, you probably would return in some undead state. But my original plan was to have that going into that final fight, you would have had, you would have lost the group buff, but you would have had a different one by being an undead, which we kind of did anyway. You know, you did have that resistances and different abilities that were to do with being like a partially undead, you know, fused back to your body spirit thing, which is also a reference to a James Herbert book, which is one of my favorite books ever, where a guy is teaching himself how to astral project from his body, and he's like laying on his bed and he astral projects out of his body, and he's like looking down at his body like, this is crazy, I'm out of my body. He's having an out-of-body experience, and then people come in and murder him, and he watches it, and his body is dead, but he isn't a ghost, but now he's living in like a ghost world, and it's such a cool concept to me, and I was like, that is what will happen to them, and it kind of did. I ended up kind of changing it a lot. But essentially, yes, the Quura bond would have done the thing where he would have just been able to completely annihilate you. But because of some other bullshit that I was going to make up, which I did, you would have been able to continue. Because otherwise, there's no game and there's no show, and you don't want to run this really. Hey, DMs, stop running things too realistically. just throw in a little Deus Ex just so everyone can keep playing the game. You know,
thank you.
For the sake of it being, you know, a show and proceeding with, you know, our game and show, I will quite often do little things like that, even though in the back of my head I'm like, I won, you lose. No. Okay, well, I think that's it. We're done here for the Q&A. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Not just the Q&A, but the entire campaign. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that we stuck the landing for you, and you, you know, you're happy with the final product, and that, you know, we got to a lot of the questions tonight. If you do have any other questions, or you're interested in finding out or following up on some of the answers that myself or the others have answered, you can join our Discord, tablestory.tv/Discord, and there's a Quura channel in there which will be going from principal shows to retired shows, which always hurts me to do, but you'll be able to find it and it exists as a legacy. You can always go in there. If you're watching this in the future on VODs, feel free to swing into there and ask questions to the cast crew or other people in the community about the show. It will exist forever for you to be able to get involved. And I hope you guys enjoyed playing it. Players, you were a great group of players. I really mean that. I'm not saying, I know I say everything with the most sarcastic tone, but genuinely, but the greatest gift that I can ever be given is a group of players that show up every week, are engaged and enjoy it. Where
am I?
We complete this thing together. It makes, you know, because this is a lot of work. These are hard to do, and enjoying doing it and being excited to run this thing and trying to present something for you and with you for other people is genuinely one of the greatest joys of my life. So thank you so much for
Well,
being a
thank
great
you,
group.
Bozo, for putting together a story once again, as you always manage to do. That succinctly manages to wrap in a year somehow. Manages to involve 4 people in a way that makes everybody feel heard, listened to, have epic moments. Everybody feels like they managed to get some development, and we still had no idea what was going on any of the time somehow, and yet you made it all coherent and cohesive. So thank you, and all of Tablestory, as always, for just always putting on an A-class show and letting us be involved. Sorry, I'm speaking for everyone.
Aggressive
These are all
love.
your words now.
I thank you for speaking for us, because I second everything you just said. It was an honor and a pleasure, and thank you so much forever. Thank you.
You guys nailed it. Loved it.
Myre,
really,
do you
really
have anything
enjoyed
you
it.
want to say, Myre?
Do I have anything I want to say?
You want to say anything? Myre?
This is your last chance. This is it. This is
All
the
right.
end.
Found out
Okay.
half an hour
Well,
ago. He doesn't even know
ladies
where
and
he is.
gentlemen, hello. My name is Myre, and I happen to be here today. So I just wanted to say, well, I hope you enjoyed Quura. I had a lot of fun playing this character, as Seer, the Drow. Yeah, thank you everybody for allowing me to play this character. Thank you players. Thank you Mirggles. Thank you Orcish. Thank you Leah for being really cool cast members to kind of bounce our characters back and forth, and being really receptive with all the bullshit that I kind of thought up on the spot. Thank you, Brad, for also facilitating this. Without you, we wouldn't have Quura, wouldn't have, first of all, each other. That's really cool. I don't really know what I'm saying right now. I'm just
Won an
words into
award,
the ether.
won an Oscar.
Yes. Thank you so much.
It's
Let me
the sign saying,
finish.
wrap it up. Wrap it
I ain't
up.
done.
Wrap it up.
But yeah, it was a great experience. I really appreciated it. And yeah, it's going to be one of those moments I'm going to look back on and go, why? Why did that
I think,
happen? Why can't it happen again? And my Tuesdays are going to be a lot more quiet, I think. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Orcish, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, with this show, it was really great to see Brad's range. This time he showed us a very depressing, gritty, dark fantasy.
I ran Star Wars last year. What are you talking about? You played Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, I think the gritty dark was mainly
Oh,
coming
sorry.
from
I
you.
thought this was a joke based on that and Miss your previous 2 campaigns.
My last two D&D campaigns are painfully similar, but
Well, let me continue, please. This is a bit. Speaking of range, crazy that Mirggles is a healer in this. Speaking of range, crazy that Leah was determined to make her character the most beloved and important. Wait, Myre's in this? Brad told me recently he was very confident with his puzzles, which is true. Which makes sense because one of his puzzles was open the door. Don't worry, we did figure that out eventually, and so did his ex-wife. Brad is lucky with this campaign, though. We had the perfect characters that worked together very smoothly. And every decision, we always knew what the other would say. One would say yes, one would say no, one would say maybe, and then Seer would lean up against a tree with his smug little face and ask why this is taking so long. But in all seriousness, I love this campaign very much. I'm going to miss everybody, and I'm going to miss Tuesdays. And thank you all so much for supporting us.
I had no idea that roast was coming, which is why I only just got some music going that would have fit it. But I'll leave it running in the background.
Can I just ask, what was the roast part about Miranda plays a healer?
It just really fit into me roasting Leah. I mean,
okay, cool.
You have two.
Afterthought, got it. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's cool. It's just, don't worry about it, Miranda. Okay. You just go back to playing Guts.
She can't anymore, can she?
I get shit for running Mistlight and then this. Miranda played Guts and then Guts.
You know what the crazy thing is, though? The first time I played Guts, I didn't know I was playing Guts.
Oh, no.
And then I deliberately played
And then
Guts.
you did it, but you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it properly this time. I know how to do it. I'm going to perfect it.
Didn't end up playing Guts, just want to say.
This is the end. We will I'm gonna go away and work on a thing that is nothing like this or Mistlight. Apart from the thing that I'm working on that is
But you're so
Mistlight.
good at it.
I'm working on a thing that is
Apart from
Mistlight.
literally making.
I'm glad you're working on your range, Brad. It's so good.
We're doing the end of Mistlight, okay? We're doing it. Leah doesn't know
Sure we
yet.
are,
Don't
yeah,
tell her.
sure we are. Sure.
Leah doesn't
yeah.
know yet. I've got.
Wing.
I've got. It's very hard to contract Leah. We have to go through like 6 agents, and a restraining order. So it's very hard for me to get Leah to do anything. But in theory, Mistlight.
Speaking of, we're over time.
And I know, I'm so scared. The next thing I run I promise, will be a lot more. There'll be NPCs in it. That's all I'm going to promise. There will
That's
be
all
NPCs.
you're going to promise.
There will be some NPCs.
You're going to be
That's
like,
the best
it's going
I
to
can
be
do.
happy, entertaining.
I'm not going to promise
comedic.
happy. I swear to God. So I have actually half written it. And at the beginning, it was just like, oh, happy fun time. And then I wrote in one sentence. And then I was like, oh no. I've done it again.
It was all a lie.
I couldn't go back either. I was like, but it's so good. I must do it again. And then they all
Fire
die.
Nation attacked.
Oh God, it's so hard to do. All right, well, thank you again, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the campaign. Thank you so much for playing, players, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show overall. We appreciate you watching every week on Tablestory as well. We have shows all of the time at the moment. I run another one on Fridays, which is a show that I have to pull out of my arsehole every weekend because it is pure chaos. Literally, it is so chaotic that I wrote chaos into the show as a NPC. Got an NPC.
Chaos control.
But please tune in to all of the other Tablestory shows. Make sure that you go and find these wonderful players on their respective socials and streams and things. There are always links everywhere to these wonderful people. If you miss their faces every Tuesday, simply go and find them. They cannot hide from you. They cannot. The internet exists. And that's it. Thank you for watching. You cannot escape the inevitability of death, but we can enjoy the journey up until that point, can't we, guys? Bye.
Sure can. Glad I spent my time before the inevitability of death.
Hey, Brad, did we level up?